Number 5. The training is brutal. When you were young, did you ever dream of being an astronaut? I think most of us did. You know, dreaming of being a cosmic sailor soaring through the Milky Way. I know I certainly did. I thought about how I'd ace the training. I'd be the perfect astronaut. I'd be this golden-haired hero of space, like a Luke Skywalker or a guy on an old pulp novel cover or something. Well, the movies and the media makes being an astronaut out to being a lot more glamorous and a lot easier than it is. I mean, we saw Homer Simpson do it and we figured we all could. But the truth is, they really do not take just about anybody. You already need to be a brilliant scientist and have an exceptional, spotless military career. So they're not just taking anybody, they are taking the best of the best of the best, the top 1% of the 1%. And they need people who can withstand incredible tolls on their body and are able to handle any problem that could be thrown their way in space. Turns out going to space, not that easy. These physical tasks include things like wilderness survival training, spending days surviving alone in the wilds, on the off chance that your ship crashes on re-entry in the middle of nowhere and you need to be able to fend for yourself before rescue comes. As well, training includes things like swimming laps in a 200-pound spacesuit or spending literally 24 hours in a row submerged underwater to stimulate the feeling of floating around in a giant suit. Or how about taking a trip on the infamous Vomit Comet, the plane that flies in parabolas to induce weightlessness and zero gravity to get your body used to floating around before you do it for real, and more often than not has astronauts tasting what they had for lunch one more time. That's about the most pleasant way I can think to say that. That doesn't quite sound like the fun, carefree adventure I dreamed of as a kid. And if you're looking for more scary stories, strange space stories, UFO sightings, we have got plenty of that and way more on Top 5 Scary. Plus, just about everything scary you could ever think of above the sun and below it. So tap that bell and stay subscribed and don't miss a single scream. Number 4, it destroys your body. Even if you are one of those best of the best of the best who can handle the brutal training that thins out the herd, once you actually do get up into space properly, just existing ravages your body in all sorts of fun, terrifying ways you've never thought of. When you think about it, we really are not meant to be up in that environment. It's kind of like a fish trying to survive on land. So it's not much of a surprise that our body kind of reacts violently poorly to the new conditions. Here's a terrible one I bet you didn't know about. I bet you didn't know that astronauts' gloves are so tight and sealed that when they take them off, I'm actually gonna gag, astronauts lose their fingernails. They get pulled like right off, and frequently they break and sprain their fingers just taking their gloves off. Or maybe you didn't know that most astronauts, after entering zero gravity for the first time, vomit almost immediately, even if they've had tons of training and simulator experience. And this is not made better at all because, you know, where is that vomit going? It's just floating around you for everyone to see. Literally just being alive in space is bad for your body. You can just be sitting, vibing by the window, and it's going to do damage to you. Astronauts who spend extended time in a space station report a huge loss of bone density, reporting horrible creaking and pains. They even shrink a little bit. Some astronauts note that when they got back to Earth, their spine had to straighten back out in an incredibly painful process. But when asked what the worst part of space life is, one astronaut, Tim Peake, responded saying, "It's watching the soles of your feet disintegrate." I am going to do my level best to explain this next thing to you without vomiting, but I cannot promise anything. He described that because astronauts use their feet so rarely in space, their soles start to soften like a newborn baby's. And the feet gradually force off all the dead skin and calluses that you build up over a lifetime of walking. Meaning sometimes astronauts, when they remove their socks, shower the cabin with a lifetime of dead skin flakes and big chunks of foot floating around the space station like the literal most disgusting snow globe imaginable. Number 3, and your mental too. The thing is, it's not just your body that is going to be put through the absolute ringer when you find yourself with a career floating up in the stars. Your mental faculties need to be sharper than anyone and able to deal with anything that could possibly get thrown at you as you're floating up miles away from home. It's no wonder David Bowie and Elton John wrote so many songs about how sad it is to be up in space. Astronauts report feeling a wide array of mental health struggles, reporting that the isolation causes them loneliness, depression, anxiety, stress, fatigue, mood swings, concentration issues, and some even getting full-blown PTSD upon returning back to the Earth. But, I mean, I get it. Imagine the workload. Imagine working a grueling day, not just any regular day. A day where if your work goes wrong, you could lead to one of or many of your teammates' deaths, and then having to go to sleep in a cold space station away from your loved ones and do that over and over again for 100 days straight. Imagine you have a bad day at work in space. You can't even go home about it. You gotta go home to space. Sleeping on a space station is far from a cozy night in a crib either. For one, there's constant noise all around you on a space station. Nobody can hear you scream in space, that much is true, but everybody can hear all the engines and computers and all that stuff going off inside the space station, meaning there's never a quiet moment. It's also not as dark as you might hope. Not only do you have to deal with the fact that your sleep cycle is no longer tied to the sunrise and sunset anymore, because you're going to see about 16 of those a day, but you have to tend with flashing lights all over the station from the machinery, but as well lights that are thought to be caused by cosmic rays passing through your eyelids. As well, there's also, no gravity. They definitely tell you that. Imagine having to tie yourself to a wall to avoid bumping your head around a cabin while you're just trying to get your 8 hours and a little REM time. Number 2, brown trout and recycling. Okay. This is going to be the grossest part of the list by far. If you want to skip right ahead to number 1, I get it. There's a reason I put this at number 2, and you'll all understand in a second. Just know I'm a child and I have the sense of humor of an 8-year-old. When you compare all the physical and mental danger astronauts have to face, is going to the toilet scarier than the risk of death? It honestly sounds like it. Peggy Whitson is an astronaut who holds a ton of records. Foremost, she's got the record for the most time spent in space, spending nearly 2 full years in orbit. She's spoken out and said that her least favorite part of living in space is the bathroom. Now, number 1 is considered to be a little easier, but it does not sound enjoyable in any way. A little hose, you attach it and it sucks the urine out, and then a machine converts that into drinking water because, yeah, astronauts drink a lot of their own pee. Now, admittedly, it's heavily processed, okay? You're not getting it out of the water cooler, it's not coming out yellow. But on a spaceship, water is sacred. Much like the still suits of Arrakis, all liquids and fluids are recycled. The water you wash your hands with, excrete, or spit out brushing your teeth, all of that is collected, processed, recycled to be drank again. Try not to think about that too much. Every astronaut you've ever seen on the news has drank so much pee. Astronauts have to fill a glorified porta potty pit and then put on a special rubber glove and pack it down nice and compact to be processed. But in zero gravity, things happen, and more often than any astronaut would ever care to admit, sometimes the mission goes a bit bad. Chris Hadfield said his crew would refer to these incidents as brown trouts. I'm not going to explain it, I think you understand. Leroy Chow, retired astronaut, spoke on his time on the station and said sternly that everyone cleans up their own mess when it happens, but he didn't elaborate on what that meant, but you can read through the lines pretty easy. When you were a little kid dreaming about life in space, did you ever consider that the world's best and brightest minds would be putting on the poop glove to catch brown trouts? And I am so sorry for the mental image I have given you. Number 1, danger. And above all else, if it hasn't been made exceedingly clear yet in this video, the life of an astronaut is not an easy one and oftentimes is extremely dangerous, with anything being able to go wrong spelling a certain disaster. Everything needs to be perfect. Now, you could look up countless stories of astronauts in danger, but I'm going to share one from Chris Hadfield because he's a Canadian icon. He spoke to BuzzFeed News about how on his first flight ever, he and fellow astronauts had to navigate a £250,000 space station towards a target the size of a coffee cup on the Russian Mir space station. Hadfield was there to relay the speed and range information to the pilot as they were pulling in for a docking maneuver, which had to be incredibly precise. In Hadfield's own words, if you hit the Mir too soft, the spring mechanisms bounce you off. If you hit the Mir just a little bit too hard, well, then you risk breaking the station in half and ending the lives of everybody on board. So you've got to hit it exactly right. No pressure or anything. When the shuttle crew was about 30 feet away, two sensors started telling them two different things. One of them said that they were at 32 feet away, and the other one said 20 feet away. Hadfield said, "They're either both wrong or one of them is completely wrong. Now what do you do? There's nobody to ask, and if the crew on board this shuttle doesn't solve this problem in the next 30 seconds, then this is it for everybody." Hadfield described using his thumb to try and measure the distance from the window. This told him they were about 21 feet away, and he used a stopwatch to try and do the math to figure out how fast they were going, and when they should fire thrusters. And well, like since I mentioned, Chris Hadfield is a national hero and not a national tragedy, we know they did end up hitting the target at the correct speed, even with 3 seconds to spare. Hadfield said the shuttle crew didn't even say a word until a few minutes after, when the shock had finally worn off, and one of the members of the crew said, "Hey, we did it, we're actually here." It goes to show that astronauts need to be razor sharp to be able to think on the fly like that, and really do need to be the best of the best to handle what they do up there. So maybe it's good I didn't end up being an astronaut and I'm just a horror YouTuber. I'm sure you guys all appreciate that way more.
Number 5. Eridanus supervoid. In the vast tapestry of the cosmos, where darkness and light dance in eternal equilibrium, few enigmas strike a chord of primal fear as profoundly as the Eridanus supervoid. Nestled within the fabric of space, this colossal expanse of emptiness defies comprehension, a yawning chasm of cosmic proportions that challenges our understanding of the universe and awakens a sense of trepidation in even the most intrepid of minds. Stretching across more than 1 billion light years, the Eridanus supervoid is an awe-inspiring testament to the unfathomable vastness of space. Situated in the southern hemisphere, its existence was first revealed through an analysis of cosmic microwave background radiation, the faint afterglow of the Big Bang. In this ghostly echo of creation, scientists identified an unsettling absence, a region where the energy and matter that compose our universe seem conspicuously absent. This void, this cosmic abyss, dubbed the Eridanus supervoid after the constellation in which it resides, is the largest known thing in our entire universe. Yet, it is not merely the size of the supervoid that chills the soul, but the profound question it raises. Could this colossal emptiness be a glimpse into an alternate reality, a rupture in the cosmic continuum? Some theories suggest that the supervoid could be a remnant of a collision with another universe, a scar left by a parallel existence. Others postulate that it might be a consequence of exotic phenomena, perhaps influenced by dark energy, which I'll get into later, or other arcane forces that defy our current understanding of physics. There's something truly terrifying about this dark spot in our universe, a place where no stars, no planets, no meteors, no aliens, or anything dare exist within the vast emptiness of the Eridanus supervoid. With no scientific reason for why this happens, one can only ponder what terrors beyond our comprehension are hidden there. But who knows, maybe we just need a really strong flashlight. Next up at number 4, zombie stars. In the Stygian expanse of the cosmos, where stars are born in fiery splendor and eventually fade into eternal darkness, a phenomenon of unspeakable horror lurks. The haunting specter of zombie stars. These celestial abominations, born from the remnants of once mighty supernovas, defy the natural order, clawing their way back from the abyss of death to wreak havoc upon the universe. Zombie stars are formed from the remains of dead stars, somehow coming back to life and using the energy of the supernova to begin life anew. Much like actual zombies, these undead stars are also very dangerous, becoming incredibly volatile from its rise from the dust. They even imitate the flesh-eating part, by absorbing energy from other stars to elongate their lifespans and retain stability. The very existence of zombie stars puts our entire understanding of space into question, making it one of the most mysterious discoveries on this list. Picture a desolate graveyard of stellar remains, where the remnants of exploded stars should have been laid to rest. But in this chilling scene, the grave robbers of the cosmos, zombie stars, rise from the cosmic dust and gas, reanimated by dark sorcery. I mean, not actual sorcery, but it sounds cool. These undead stars are born of cataclysmic explosions, remnants of once brilliant suns that met a violent end in the inferno of a supernova. Yet, where one might expect only darkness and silence, a malevolent force twists the cosmic narrative. These zombie stars, devoid of their former brilliance, rise from the ashes with a grotesque mockery of life, an embodiment of the uncanny and unexplained. Just imagine the spectral glow of these zombie stars, casting an otherworldly dread upon their surroundings. Their feeble glimmers are tinged with an unsettling hue, reminiscent of the sickly pallor of death. No longer conforming to the laws of stellar evolution, these undead remnants linger in an eerie state of existence, like phantoms haunting the cosmic night. As the universe expands, these zombie stars shamble through the galactic graveyard, defying the laws of nature. They distort the fabric of space-time around them, creating gravitational anomalies that send ripples of unease through any celestial bodies that dare venture too close. Their gravitational pull, far stronger than their dim luminosity suggests, creates a sense of impending doom for any unfortunate object caught within their grasp. In the cold emptiness of space, the dark energy of these zombie stars infects the very essence of the cosmos, leaving astronomers and cosmologists alike to grapple with the implications of their existence. Are they harbingers of a greater cosmic malevolence? The will of God? Or do they hint at extraterrestrial forces lurking in the shadows with power beyond the limits of human comprehension? No matter what they are, I think a lot of us should be more like zombie stars. Even upon facing death, these things just get back up and start shining in the sky all over again. Truly the Rocky of cosmic objects. Boom, bet you didn't expect to be inspired today, did you? Moving on to number 3, pulsars. In the cryptic expanse of space, the universe conceals a horror beyond imagination. The pulsar, a celestial enigma that strikes terror into the hearts of astronomers and cosmologists. Pulsars, the cosmic lighthouses born from the fiery death throes of massive stars, possess a sinister power that stretches far beyond their mesmerizing beauty, wreaking havoc on magnetism and Earth's delicate geomagnetic balance. They're formed when massive stars run out of fuel and collapse. As a result, the stars explode, creating what we call neutron stars. When these stars spin rapidly, they create a pulsar. These spectral remnants of stellar collapse emit beams of radiation that pierce the cosmos with an unwavering pulse. These mesmerizing flashes, while captivating, belie their true nature as harbingers of doom. The immense energy unleashed by pulsars has the potential to disrupt the magnetic fields of celestial bodies unfortunate enough to be within their reach, which is pretty hard to avoid because some pulsars travel through space at millions of miles per hour. Pulsars usually radiate radio waves, however, not all of them do. Some pulsars actually release gamma rays, which are far more deadly concentrated blasts of radiation. They're not just single gamma ray bursts either. A pulsar releases a fan of these dangerous waves. On top of this, pulsars are so incredibly dense that they're just a nudge away from becoming black holes, making them true forces of nature within the depths of space. But the greatest threat it holds is its magnetism. The chilling effects of pulsars on magnetism become even more ominous when considered in the context of Earth. Our planet's magnetosphere, a fragile shield protecting us from the cosmic maelstrom, is susceptible to the influence of these cosmic menaces. Pulsars, with their intense magnetic fields and dead radiation, can perturb Earth's magnetic environment, triggering geomagnetic storms of unprecedented magnitude. These storms, like cosmic tempests, unleash a torrent of charged particles that can disrupt power grids, communication networks, and even jeopardize the lives of astronauts in orbit. Perhaps the most haunting connection between pulsars and Earth's magnetic turmoil is the chilling tale of the Carrington event. In 1859, the sun unleashed a titanic solar storm, now known as the Carrington event, which sent a barrage of charged particles hurtling towards Earth. The planet's magnetic field was thrown into disarray, resulting in awe-inspiring auroras dancing far beyond their usual polar confines. Telegraph systems erupted in flames, casting a sinister glow upon the terrestrial chaos. The Carrington event serves as a stark reminder of the potent interplay between celestial horrors and Earth's delicate magnetic balance. It offers a glimpse into the catastrophic potential of pulsars and other cosmic phenomena that could plunge our technological world into darkness and chaos. The unnerving specter of history repeating itself on a grander and more devastating scale looms like a shadow over our interconnected society. Nowadays, such a storm could shut down all technology on Earth, putting our lives at a complete standstill. This could have cataclysmic effects on society, the economy, and life as we know it. And that was just the sun. If a pulsar were to simply fly by our solar system, millions of miles away, it could send us into a total dark age, which would mean no more YouTube, you guys. So yeah. Big danger. Fortunately, NASA has yet to observe a pulsar anywhere near us, but when the time comes, y'all best be prepared. And at number 2, dark matter. And friends? Within the depths of the cosmos, where galaxies dance and stars ignite the heavens, there lies a darkness more unsettling than the absence of light itself. This shadowy abyss is populated by 3 enigmatic, undetectable, and deeply unsettling entities: dark matter, dark energy, and the truly terrifying strange matter. These cosmic enigmas, lurking beyond the edges of human comprehension, cast a pall of dread over our understanding of the universe. Dark matter, that elusive specter that defies detection, exerts its invisible grasp on galaxies, holding them together in cosmic waltz. Its presence is felt through its gravitational influence, yet its true nature remains tantalizingly beyond our grasp. It surrounds us, permeates the cosmos, and yet remains utterly inscrutable. Its enigma whispers that there are realms of existence, hidden from our senses, that harbor terrors we cannot fathom. Dark energy, an even more sinister force, propels the universe to expand at an accelerating pace, defying the gravitational pull that should be drawing it together. It is a mysterious anti-gravitational energy, and its presence only deepens the cosmic mystery. The thought of an unseen force pushing the universe further apart, leaving galaxies adrift in an ever-darkening void, evokes a creeping sense of isolation and insignificance. Now, I'm sure you guys have heard of the first two, but what you might not know about it all is strange matter, a dread-inducing concept that dwells at the fringes of theoretical physics. This sinister substance, if it even exists, challenges the very fabric of reality itself. Now, I'm no astrophysicist, so know that I'm going to be getting some things wrong. But strange matter is hypothesized to be a form of highly unstable, yet also incredibly stable, quark matter, an even more exotic and unstable version of the matter we know. If strange matter were to come in contact with normal matter, it could initiate a nightmarish chain reaction, converting all it touches into more strange matter. The result would be an unstoppable cascade, a cosmic contagion devouring entire planets, stars, and perhaps even galaxies in its insatiable hunger. Imagine a universe in which strange matter is unleashed, a grotesque plague consuming everything in its path, reducing the cosmos to a featureless expanse of the unknown. This dystopian nightmare challenges the very foundations of reality, reminding us that the universe's most unsettling secrets may lie in the most fundamental building blocks of existence. Has yet to be found in our observable universe, but its existence remains one to be feared. The name is pretty stupid though. And finally, at number 1, the Great Attractor. This enigmatic force concealed within the vast cosmic web exerts an insidious gravitational pull, drawing galaxies, planets, stars, and even other black holes towards its heart with an irresistible pull. Yet, its nature remains shrouded in darkness, its true identity eluding our most relentless pursuits. The Great Attractor's eerie power is not to be underestimated. Galaxies, vast and ancient, dance to its tune, surrendering their trajectories to its sinister grasp. It stands as a gravitational anomaly, a cosmic lodestone whose immense mass defies explanation and comprehension. Its siren song lures galaxies from all directions, weaving an intricate tapestry of cosmic motion that defies the very laws of the universe we thought we knew. The worst part is, we can't even see it. It's obscured by the Milky Way's galactic plane, lying behind what is called the zone of avoidance, meaning there's no good way of observing it. Astronomers were only able to spot it when they noticed that just about everything in the universe was slowly making its way towards the Great Attractor. Scientists grapple with the unsettling notion that this colossal force could dictate the fate of our local universe. Its gravitational tendrils tug at the fabric of space-time, warping trajectories and redefining cosmic destinies. The Great Attractor whispers of uncharted territories, promising a journey into the heart of cosmic darkness, where the laws of physics may warp and twist like a feverish nightmare. As we peer deeper into the void, attempting to unveil the Great Attractor's true form, we are confronted by a chilling realization. The universe's most monstrous secrets remain veiled, forever beyond our grasp. Well, maybe not forever. The Great Attractor stands as a cosmic specter, a harrowing reminder of the limits of human understanding, inviting us to confront the terrifying unknown that lurks just beyond the fringes of our knowledge. In its presence, we are humbled by the realization that the universe, with all its splendor and terror, is a realm where mysteries may forever elude our grasp, leaving us to ponder the chilling forces that shape the cosmic tapestry. At number 5 is advanced alien technology. Before you guys come at me and call me some sci-fi nut, hear me out. For aliens to get to Earth, they would need highly complex and state-of-the-art technology to create spacecrafts that safely take them from galaxy to galaxy. While this is something most people are aware of, the true nature of alien technology still remains a secret. In the momentous Grudge hearing, he goes on to explain that the United States government is currently harboring and hiding alien technology and life. He claimed that the US has retrieved multiple crashed UFOs, some with aliens still inside, and upon retrieval, they picked them apart in order to research their technologies. However, we still have zero information on what exactly they've found and what futuristic technical knowledge they've attained. We have a general idea of the great danger that we may be in when in contact with an alien threat, but the full extent of that danger remains hidden. We can only assume that the US is in the process of deciphering the secrets to making our own UFOs, which we could use to explore other planets within and outside our solar system, and perhaps even colonize them. But we might not have to wait for very long before we discover what it is we know and what it is we don't know. Harvard professor Avi Loeb has been in Papua New Guinea investigating a meteor that crashed in the neighboring ocean in 2014. This specific meteor was of great interest, as when it crashed, it moved at speeds that are too fast for it to be gravitationally bound to the sun, and that the material it's made of was significantly tougher than that of other meteors. These traits indicate that the meteor could in fact be some sort of spacecraft or piece of alien technology. Upon finally finding the interstellar rock, Loeb and crew found microscopic, marble-like objects made of an alloy never before seen in our solar system. If these small marbles are confirmed to be artificial, then we could be stumbling upon the first confirmed pieces of genuine extraterrestrial technology. My theory? These are alien microplastics, or at least some sort of equivalent. The microscopic size of these marbles can indicate that these are only smaller, broken down versions of pre-existing technology or items that aliens might use. If this is the case, then hopefully scientists will find a way to reverse engineer these small alien spheres and discover their true origins. Coming up next, at number 4, is panspermia. Deriving from the ancient Greek words pan, meaning all, and sperma, meaning seed, panspermia is a hypothesis created by the Greek philosopher Anaxagoras in the 5th century BC. It states that life exists all across the universe, as it has been distributed by space dust, meteoroids, asteroids, and of course different spacecrafts carrying bacteria and other microorganisms. Hence the name panspermia. It means that the seeds of life are spread all across the universe. All, pan, seed, spermia, yeah, you get it. While the concept of panspermia emerged thousands of years ago, its relevance to our understanding of extraterrestrial life is as vibrant as ever. In recent space exploration missions, the European Space Agency's ExoMars rover and NASA's Perseverance rover have been equipped with instruments built specifically to analyze the surface of Mars for signs of life that has found itself on the planet through space dust, comets, and all those other fun space things. Furthermore, advancements in space exploration have led to discovery of something called extremophiles, resilient microorganisms that thrive in the extreme environments on Earth and other places in space. Their existence on Earth indicates that life can also thrive on the harsh environments of other planets. The most well-known example of an extremophile, you might have heard of them, is the tardigrade, better known as a water bear. These 8-legged microanimals are thought to be one of the most resilient life forms known. They are capable of surviving extreme temperatures, pressures, air deprivation, high amounts of radiation, dehydration, and starvation. In fact, tardigrades are so resilient that they're capable of surviving the cold, dark vacuum of space. If animals that can survive in space already exist on Earth, imagine how many other tardigrade-like species exist on other planets, opening the door for panspermia across the universe. Who knows, maybe there are plenty of extremophilic aliens on Earth already. We've just been looking in the wrong places. And at number 3 is going to be life on Mars. The existence of life on Mars is certainly not a new concept to anyone, especially with the discovery of water on the red planet, which is widely considered in the scientific community to be a necessary foundation for the development of life. However, even with all these findings, NASA claims to be incapable of finding actual life on Mars. But that might be because it's already found its way to Earth 13,000 years ago. Alan Hill's 84001, or just ALH 84001 for short, is an ancient meteorite discovered in Antarctica in 1984. The remarkable rock, ejected from the Martian surface 4.1 billion years ago, has offered many clues towards the existence of life hidden beneath our solar neighbor's surface. In 1996, a team of scientists led by David McKay of NASA's Johnson Space Center announced their discovery of intriguing fossil-like microstructures and features within the meteorite. These fossils imply that life on Mars did in fact exist, just long before humanity. And this isn't the only proof. In 1976, the United States landed 2 of their own Viking landers, making them the first US spacecrafts to land on the red planet. The crafts would be the first to take high-resolution images of the planet and analyze a variety of the planet's features. But most importantly, an examination of the Martian soil tested positive for metabolism, which heavily suggests the presence of life. Theories of them hiding the alien race to Martians having been long extinct, and that the red planet's desolate nature is caused by it being the ruins of a once vivacious planet. But what do you guys think? Is life currently on Mars? Has it already gone extinct? Or maybe there are already Martians hidden among us right now? Tell me in the comments. At number 2 is life across the solar system. Immanuel Kant, the renowned 18th century philosopher, posited a compelling argument regarding the potential existence of alien intelligence in his work titled Universal Natural History and Theory of the Heavens, which is probably the coolest book name ever, but I digress. Kant states that the universe is so vast that the existence of aliens is certain. I mean, there are just so many stars and planets that at least one of them has to sustain life, right? It was his ideas that laid the groundwork for modern discussions on the existence of extraterrestrial life. The Drake equation, formulated by astrophysicist Frank Drake in 1961, complements Kant's theories by providing a more mathematical approach to estimate the number of alien civilizations in our galaxy that might be capable of communication. The equation factors in various variables, such as the rate of star formation, the fraction of stars with planets, the number of habitable planets per star, the fraction of planets where life emerges, and the longevity of technologically advanced civilizations. With the hundreds of billions of stars within our galaxy, along with the recent discoveries of exoplanets around those stars, there are certainly countless habitable worlds scattered throughout the Milky Way. In fact, life could exist within our very solar system. Beyond just Mars and its many riverbeds and subsurface water ice, there's Enceladus and Titan, moons of Saturn. These moons both have subsurface oceans, lakes, rivers, and seas beneath their icy crusts, making them potential hotbeds for life. Some scientists have even observed on Titan that there may be living cells deep within its seas, making it home to several microbial Saturnian species. It's kind of a mouthful. Another theory of Kant's was that aliens' intelligence becomes more intelligent the further we are from the star that we orbit, meaning that planets like Mercury and Venus would not be likely to hold intelligent life, but planets like Saturn and Neptune hold highly intelligent life. Now, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but humans are already a very smart species. But if Kant's theory is correct, then that would make us the dumb ones in the solar system. Us, the dumb ones. What the hell? Anyway, at number 1 is the WOW signal. With the confirmation of alien life on Earth and its existence on other planets within our solar system, there is not a single doubt in my mind that aliens populate not only our galaxy, but the entire depths of space. However, what NASA doesn't want you to know is that we've actually been directly contacted by aliens nearly half a century ago. On August 15th, 1977, astronomer Jerry R. Ayman, I probably pronounced that wrong, would find something incredible while working on the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, or SETI for short, project at Ohio State University. Using the university's Big Ear radio telescope, he was able to intercept a mysterious and strong radio signal coming from the Sagittarius constellation, which lasted for 72 seconds and displayed characteristics suggesting an artificial source. Any Sag fans watching right now? The signal got its name because after Ayman discovered it, he would circle it and write "wow" in big letters next to it. What makes it so fascinating are its unique characteristics. It was a narrow band radio signal, meaning it was confined to a very specific range of radio frequencies. Natural cosmic sources do not emit signals in such a narrow range, making the signal's origin almost certainly alien. Moreover, the signal's intensity varied significantly during its brief appearance, suggesting a point source moving relative to the telescope. The immediate assumption at the time was that this signal was caused by a passing satellite, but extensive research and attempts to recreate the signal has shown that it is impossible to recreate by human means. Unfortunately, the signal was so seemingly random that it is undecipherable, and humanity has yet to receive such a signal since. But with all these aliens close to us already, I have no doubt the ones way far out will contact us again soon. Let's just cross our fingers and hope they're friendly. If one thing is certain, it's that we're going to be interacting with alien life a whole lot more in the near future, and I'm all here for it.
Coming up first on this list of alien abductions today is going to be Antonio Villas-Boas. I probably pronouncing that wrong, I'm gonna be honest, should have looked it up before. A Brazilian man who became infamous in 1957 when his alleged story of an alien encounter rocked our understanding of this world. According to his account, he was working on his family's farm near São Francisco de Sales when he observed a bright red object in the night sky. As this object approached, Boas claimed it changed color to orange and then landed on the ground. He He described it as looking like a metallic egg-shaped craft with rotating lights on top. Reportedly, 4 small beings emerged from the craft. Humanoid, grayish blue skin, the classic like little gray alien that you always see. These beings took him aboard their craft, they took samples of his DNA, and also, if you believe what he said, they said that they had him mate with one of their more attractive female humanoid aliens. After a beautiful night, Boas claimed that he was released and watched as the craft took off and disappeared into the night sky. He reported experiencing physical symptoms afterwards, including nausea and weakness. Now, initially, Boas would keep this to himself. It's embarrassing to tell your friends you kissed an alien, I guess. Eventually, though, he would share his story in 1958, contacting a journalist and gaining widespread attention from media all over, all the way up to top 5 scary YouTube videos. And if you're looking for way more stories about alien abduction, like I just said, Top 5 Scary is kind of the name in that. Click on through, we have got videos on every subject you could possibly think up that's creepy and crawly. So hit subscribe, make sure to hit that bell as well so you don't miss a single scream, but if you would be so kind, do that at the end of this video because I got 4 more stories of alien abductions coming up for you right now. Number 4, Yaphet Kotto. Yaphet Kotto is an American actor. He's most known for Live and Let Die, but he is far more famously known as Parker in Ridley Scott's 1978 masterpiece Alien. Perhaps then that it's a bit ironic, or it's perfectly fitting, that he has been encountering aliens since he was young. Kotto believes in aliens, alongside seeing aliens, and has even claimed to have made direct physical contact and held an alien. Speaking out for the first time ever about this in 2017, Kotto told Vice News about his experiences. He said it began in his youth when he was staying home one day looking out at the streets of the Bronx, New York, watching people play stickball. He turned around and there was a humanoid figure that stood 5 or 6 feet tall with an elongated head which disappeared. Pretty sad, because Kotto would spend a lot of his life pursued by aliens with elongated heads on board the USS Nostromo. He claimed that over the next 50 years he was continuously monitored. He described one scenario where coming home and then going into his garage to meditate, he saw something shining ethereally bright. He says that there were things flying over his house, wouldn't call them aircrafts, but entities. He said that every time he would move to a new house, there would be a ring of smoke that would be present when he moved in. Now, the most outlandish claim was that while visiting the Philippines, Kotto claims he saw a UFO the size of Yankee Stadium flying over an office he was staying at following that same circle of smoke. Now, there's not really any recordings or sightings of a gigantic UFO in the Philippines around this time, so kinda have to wonder. Now, Kotto claims to have an IQ of 196 and describes himself as being mentally stable. Who isn't? And was wary to talk about any of his paranormal experiences for fear that people would dismiss him for his connection to the alien movies. So what do you think, my fair viewers? Is it too much of a cosmic coincidence? Or was it perhaps destiny that an actor famous for being tangled with aliens was pursued by them in real life? Maybe he was just getting really into the role, doing that like Jared Leto method acting research, and thought that to play a guy hunted by aliens, he should be hunted by aliens in real life. Number 3, Linda Napolitano. Linda Napolitano, also known as Linda Quartile, is a woman who claims that she was abducted by aliens in New York City in 1989. Even aliens can't resist the allure of the Big Apple. Gotta come check out Lady Liberty. Her story has become one of the most famous, but also controversial alleged alien abduction stories. Now, according to how Miss Napolitano tells it, she was asleep in her 12th floor apartment in Manhattan when she was suddenly awoken by a very blinding bright light. She claimed then that she saw 3 small beings with big pale gray skin and large black eyes that levitated her out of her bedroom window and into a waiting nearby UFO up above. She described these beings as very humanoid and looking about 4 feet tall, another example of those classic little gray aliens like we mentioned in the first point. Napolitano reported that she was taken to a room on the craft where she was examined by these beings. She said that she was taken to a council room where she saw several humanoid-esque beings who were running the thing, sort of administrative, seemed like a captain or commander type. Napolitano claimed that these beings communicated with her telepathically, and they told her that they were from a far off planet called Serpo, and were conducting experiments on humans to understand our physiology as we were a bit new to them. Okay, then it's completely reasonable, no cause for any alarm. Take a couple fingernails, take some spit, take some hair, take whatever you need. Now, Napolitano's alleged abduction got her quite a lot of attention because it's a fantastical story and a wild depiction of an abduction, and her story was featured in major news outlets and even a book detailing what happened. Now, obviously there is some skepticism if Napolitano was just telling a tall story to get a little attention, but over the years she has maintained that what happened to her was the good and honest truth, and has since become a fairly notable figure in the UFO communities sharing her story. Number 2. Boriska Kiprianovich. Boriska Kiprianovich is a Russian man who gained attention due to his claimed extraordinary abilities and also his alleged memories of his past life on Mars when he was a Martian. Born on January 11th, 1996 in Volsky, Russia, Boriska started attracting media attention from a fairly early age. According to Boriska, he began speaking very shortly after his birth. Babies don't usually do that. He displayed exceptional intelligence and knowledge beyond his years, claiming that they stemmed from his previous life when he lived on Mars. And he shared details about his Martian life, its civilization, and its advanced technology. According to Boriska, if you were expecting the Martians, you're out of luck because they've already come and gone, claiming that the Martians were a highly advanced society that was devastated by a cataclysmic event thousands of years ago and have since been wiped out. He claimed that Martians possessed a deep understanding of spiritual concepts, had far longer lifespans than humans, and had technology infinitely more advanced than ours. They probably also have some pretty cool movies. It makes sense then that Elon Musk wants us to get back out there so bad. Come check out some of the wreckage of their cool society. While some people found Boriska's story intriguing and considered it evidence of reincarnation or extraterrestrial contact, others remain, I think, a little healthily skeptical. For one thing, I didn't know you could reincarnate from like a different planet. I thought you had to reincarnate on the same planet, but I guess not. It's definitely fantastical, and until we can actually get up to the surface of Mars, it's going to be pretty difficult to confirm or deny if there really was a society that existed there previously. Now, it should also be noted that as the years have gone on, Boriska has spoken out less and less about his past life as a Martian prince, and there have been a lot fewer updates on him overall, which definitely lends a teeny tiny bit of skepticism. It does make you wonder if maybe the whole story was just a young person making something up, which I've never heard of something like that happening, so I don't know. Number 1, David Huggins. Oh, David. We've talked about Mr. Huggins before on the channel, and I'm talking about Mr. Huggins again because he's one of my favorite abduction stories. I saved the best for last. David Huggins is a painter who claims that he has been abducted by aliens multiple times throughout his life. They just could not get enough lovin' of Huggins. His first account happened when he was young, and he reported that he saw a UFO hovering over a nearby field, and a humanoid figure appeared down from the craft, blessing Huggins by telling him telepathically that he would have a special mission to fulfill in life. Of course, he had no idea what the special mission was at the time, and if he did, maybe he would not have been as excited. Over the years, Huggins claims that he had several encounters with these alien humanoids who had blessed him. He describes them as being tall and thin, and with large heads and large eyes. Now, he says these beings have taken him aboard their craft and shown him a number of things, including the creation of the universe, the future of the human race, how they get caramel inside chocolate bars without there being a hole, all sorts of wondrous things. Now, here's where things get interesting and a bit difficult to talk about with content guidelines, because Huggins claims that as a part of fulfilling this galactic destiny that he's gone for a few rolls in the hay with aliens, and that he's fathered several alien human hybrids with the extraterrestrials, and my mom watches these videos, so I'm sorry if I'm struggling. Inspired by these momentous events, Huggins painted his truth, rather directly influencing his artistic career, with most of his paintings depicting humanoid beings and UFOs hanging out. His paintings are actually visible in the Visionary Art Museum in Baltimore if you're up near there and want to check them out sometime. They're really cool. They are definitely not safe for work unless your work is my work, at which case looking at pictures of aliens kissing is my work and my passion. Do what you love, and you never work a day in your life, and I have never worked a day in my life.
In 5th place, we have HD 189773b. Seeing as most of these planets today are only referred to with scientific labels, to make my life easier, I've made the executive decision to give them nicknames. HD 189773b will now be referred to as Snow Globe, purely based on my personal need to see this environment captured in a globe. On October 6th of 2005, a team of astronomers announced the discovery of Snow Globe, which was detected using Doppler spectroscopy. Real-time radial velocity measurements detected the Rossiter-McLaughlin effect caused by the planet passing in front of its star before photometric measurements confirmed that the planet was transiting. In 2006, a team led by Drake Deming announced detection of strong infrared thermal emission from the transiting exoplanet by measuring the flux decrement, or decrease of total light, during its prominent secondary eclipse, which, for those of us who speak regular English, is when the planet passes behind the star. Well, that was a lot easier. The mass of the planet is estimated to be 16% larger than Jupiter's, with the planet completing an orbit around its host star every 2.2 days and an orbital speed of 152.5 kilometers per second. Wild. In 2008, a team of astrophysicists appeared to have detected and monitored the planet's visible light using polarimetry, and the result was confirmed and refined by the same team in 2011. They found that the planet albedo is significantly larger in blue light compared to in red, most probably due to Rayleigh scattering and molecular absorption in the red. The blue color of the planet was confirmed in 2013, which would have made Snow Globe the first planet to have its overall color determined by two different techniques. These measurements in polarized light have since been disputed by two separate teams using more sensitive polarimeters, with upper limits of the polarimetric signal provided therein. Okay, bear with my pronunciation of the big words, folks. I'm doing my very best here. Your girl is perpetually exhausted. The blueness of the planet may be the result of Rayleigh scattering, which I mentioned before. On July 11th of 2007, a team led by Giovanna Tinetti published the results of their observations using the Spitzer Space Telescope, concluding that there is solid evidence for significant amounts of water vapor in the planet's atmosphere. Follow-up observations made using the Hubble Space Telescope, a very popular telescope, confirmed the presence of water vapor, neutral oxygen, and also the organic compound methane. Later, very large telescope observations also detected the presence of carbon monoxide on the day side of the planet. Kinda dangerous. It is currently unknown how the methane originated, as the planet's high 700 degrees Celsius temperature should cause the water and methane to react, replacing the atmosphere with that scary carbon monoxide. Personally, I get irritable when the weather reaches like the 20s here on Earth, so I know I would not survive that oven at all. Nevertheless, the presence of roughly 0.004% of water vapor fraction by volume in the atmosphere of Snow Globe was confirmed with high-resolution emission spectra taken in 2021. I'm sure after all that fascinating information, someone out there is asking, but Alexa, why wouldn't NASA want us to know about this one? What's scary about it? The weather on Snow Globe is deadly. The winds, made up of silicate particles, blow up to 8,700 kilometers per hour, and observations have found evidence that it rains molten glass horizontally. See, I'm trying to, imagine sideways glass raining down, and I'm drawing a bunch of scary blanks. Personally speaking, that sounds cool to watch from a very safe distance, ergo the nickname, but not up close anytime soon. I don't need glass shards on my side. In 4th place, we have the darkest exoplanet known to date. TRES-2b was discovered on August 21st, 2006 by the Transatlantic Exoplanet Survey by detecting the transit of the planet across its parent star. The discovery was confirmed by the W.M. Keck Observatory on September 8th of 2006 by measuring the radial velocity of the star that hosts TRES-2b. Okay, alrighty, nickname time. I'm thinking midnight. The planet was identified in 2011 as the darkest known exoplanet, reflecting less than 1% of any light that hits it, and it is located 750 light years away from the solar system. I'm talking like worse than charcoal, or the Vantablack 3.0 paint in terms of reflection on the surface of midnight. The planet's mass and radius indicate that it is a gas planet with a bulk composition similar to that of Jupiter. Unlike Jupiter, but similar to many planets detected around other stars, midnight is located very close to its star and belongs to the class of planets known as hot Jupiters. This system was within the field view of the Kepler spacecraft. This planet continues to be studied by other projects, and the parameters are continuously improving. A 2007 study improved stellar and planetary parameters. A 2008 study concluded that the TRES-2 system is a binary star system. Now, this significantly affects the values for the stellar and the planetary parameters. No one really knows why the planet is so dark. One reason could be that an absence of reflective clouds, such as those which make Jupiter so bright due to midnight's proximity to its parent star and the consequent high temperature. Another reason could be the presence in the atmosphere of light-absorbing chemicals such as vaporized sodium, potassium, or titanium oxide. What do you think? Let me know down in those comments. In third place, time to explore WASP-12. I'm sure you folks get the drill by now. I'm thinking. I'm sure you can see the steam pouring out of the top of my head right now. I've got it. Firefly. And no, that's not intentionally a reference to one of my favorite shows, but take it how you will. Firefly is a hot Jupiter. Ooh, that sounds familiar. And was discovered on April 1st, 2008 by the Super WASP Planetary Transit Survey. Yeah, many folks originally thought it was a joke, but I assure you, it isn't. Hot Jupiters, or hot Saturns, are a class of gas giant exoplanets that are inferred to be physically similar to Jupiter, but that have very short orbital periods. The close proximity to their stars and high surface atmosphere temperatures resulted in their informal name, hot Jupiters. Firefly is the hottest planet ever found at a sizzling 2,250 degrees Celsius, as hot as some stars. Now, this find could challenge models of how close planets can be to their host stars. Firefly takes only a little over 1 Earth day to orbit its star, in contrast to, the 365.25 days for the Earth to orbit the Sun. Consequently, it has one of the lowest densities for exoplanets, which is inflated by the flux of energy from the star. On December 3rd of 2013, scientists working with the Hubble Space Telescope reported detecting water in the atmosphere of the exoplanet. In December 2017, researchers working on the HST announced that Firefly reflects just 6% of the light that shines on its surface. As a result, the exoplanet has been described as black as asphalt and pitch black. In second place, we have Gliese 667c. Let me know, by the way, if y'all are enjoying the fun little nicknames in the comments. It just makes it easier for my ADHD brain to know which is which if it's a fun name and not a mishmash of letters and numbers. For this beauty, I dub the Two-Faced. It resides a little over 23 light years away from here in the constellation Scorpius and was discovered in 2011 by American and European astronomers. Two-Faced is 4 times as massive as Earth, and it's very close to its star, only less than half the distance that Mercury is from our sun. It takes 23 days and 14 hours for it to complete 1 orbit around its star. Because of this, you would think that, this exoplanet is not able to host life because of its close proximity to its parent star. That's not the case here. Two-Faced orbits around a red dwarf star, which is tiny compared to the sun. That means that the Earth and this exoplanet are at roughly the same relative spot in their star's habitable zone. There's just one teeny tiny problem though. This exoplanet is tidal locked, which means it doesn't rotate on its axis. One side of the planet is always facing its star, and the other always facing away. The side that is always facing the star is so scorchingly hot that it would be impossible to live there, as it would melt you alive. Now, the other side that's facing away is so cold that you would instantly freeze. However, what makes this planet possibly able to support human life in the future is the narrow strip of land halfway between its hot and cold side that is just the perfect temperature to support life. But imagine stumbling home one night, you're totally out of it, so tired, and you lose your balance, and that's it. Either you freeze or you burn. It's a bit extreme. I'll stick with Earth. Finally, in our first place, we have Planet 9. Out of everything I've listed today, this is probably what's most likely to land me on some sort of watch list. Hey NASA, if y'all actually released the info you hoard on, aliens coming to Earth and what you've discovered, people wouldn't demand it as much. Planet 9 is the 9th planet in the outer region of the solar system. Sorry Pluto, I promise I'll make it up to you. Its gravitational effects could explain the peculiar clustering of orbits for a group of extreme trans-Neptunian objects that orbit the Sun at distances averaging more than 250 times that of Earth. These ETNOs tend to make their closest approaches to the Sun in one sector, and their orbits are similarly tilted. These alignments suggest that this undiscovered planet may be shepherding the orbits of the most distant known solar system objects. Based on earlier considerations, this super Earth-sized planet would have a predicted mass of 5 to 10 times that of the Earth and an elongated orbit 400 to 800 times as far from the Sun as the Earth. The orbit estimation was refined somewhat in 2021, but the mathematical equation it's too much for my brain to comprehend today. Konstantin Batygin and Michael E. Brown suggested that Planet 9 may be the core of a giant planet that was ejected from its original orbit by Jupiter during the genesis of the solar system, while others proposed that the planet was captured from another star, was once a rogue planet, or that it formed on a distant orbit and was pulled into an eccentric orbit by a passing star. Lots of fun theories to look through. Although sky surveys such as Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer and Pan-STARRS did not detect Planet 9, they have not ruled out the existence of a Neptune diameter object in the outer solar system. The ability of these past sky surveys to detect Planet 9 9 was dependent on its location and characteristic. Further surveys of the remaining regions are ongoing now, using NEOWISE and the 8-meter Subaru telescope. In 5th place, we have Planet 9. So in April of 2016, the New York Post tweeted that a newly discovered planet could destroy Earth as soon as that month. Now, obviously we're all still here, unless we've been replaced by AI or holograms without my knowledge. Honestly, 2016 was the year I transitioned from high school to university, and 'twas a very chaotic year for me. The newspaper was referring to Planet 9, a theoretical planet at the edge of the solar system. Based on earlier considerations, this hypothetical super-Earth-sized planet would have had a predicted mass of 5 to 10 times that of the Earth, an elongated orbit 400 to 800 times as far from the Sun as the Earth. So expert astronomers have suggested that Planet 9 may be the core of a giant planet that was ejected from its original orbit by Jupiter during the genesis of the solar system, captured from another star, once a rogue planet, or that it formed on a distant orbit and was pulled into an eccentric orbit by a passing star. An accompanying video also claimed that the new planet would be throwing all sorts of asteroids and comets at Earth, which would supposedly end up pummeling our planet. Astronomers are actively looking for it to explain motions of some objects in the icy Kuiper Belt, a vast region of icy objects beyond Neptune. I tried to find a pronunciation for that word, couldn't find it, so if I'm wrong, let me know. And while sky surveys such as Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer, otherwise known as WISE, and Pan-STARRS did not detect Planet 9, they have not ruled out the existence of a Neptune-diameter object in the outer solar system. When the planet is actually found, it will pose no threat to us, according to the California Institute of Technology's Mike Brown, who was one of the original backers of the Planet 9 theory. While it doesn't have an official moniker right now, it will likely be a name chosen from Roman or Greek mythology. Let me know in the comments what you think it should be, officially named. I personally think Dolos, the spirit of trickery, since NASA seems to want to keep this planet their little secret. In 4th place, we have the McMinnville UFO sighting. Widely regarded by UFOologists to have produced the most important photographs of a UFO, the McMinnville sighting became famous at the height of the 1950s UFO craze. Paul Trink captured the images on camera after his wife, Evelyn, spotted a slow-moving metal disc while feeding the rabbits on their farm. The images went on to be printed in Life magazine. The pair maintained that they had seen a genuine UFO until their deaths, repeating the tale for the Oregonian in 1997, year I was born. Now, before someone starts asking what this has to do with NASA, it absolutely has everything to do with them. They're the ones who cover up UFO sightings and proof. And if you remember, my last point, I'm pretty sure they have a hand in covering up government proof as well. Now, to elaborate on this event, Evelyn Trent started yelling for her husband at about 7:45 p.m. on the evening of May 11th, 1950. She was feeding the rabbits in the yard of the couple's Dayton farm when she saw what she described as a good-sized parachute canopy without the strings. Only silver, bright, mixed with bronze. She later elaborated that it was as pretty as anything she ever saw. Evelyn ran into the house, found her husband and their camera, and the duo raced back into the yard. Paul Trent also spotted what he described as a round, shiny, wingless object hovering in the sky. The 43-year-old farmer managed to take 2 photographs before the flying object disappeared into the evening mist. Fun fact, they're the most famous photos ever to come out of Yamhill County. The McMinnville Telephone Register and the Oregonian published the images in June of 1950, a month after Paul Trent took them. So the delay was because he had to finish off the roll before getting the images developed. Such a struggle sometimes. Life magazine followed the Oregon newspapers, offering its national audience, a gander at the unidentified flying object. Soon, because of this, a U.S. Air Force investigator came to the Trent farm, and while explaining the event to the officer, Paul said that the object was coming in towards them and seemed to be tipped up a little bit. He emphasized it was very bright, almost silvery, and made no noise. The investigator had heard such stories before, since once again, this was the golden age of UFO sightings. But while most alien craft tales are easily debunked after being discovered to be weather balloons or private planes or obvious hoaxes, that wasn't the case with the Trent's photos. In 1967, the Air Force commissioned prominent nuclear physicist Edward U. Condon to lead an exhaustive UFO study. The 950-page report, exhaustive, titled Scientific Study of Unidentified Flying Objects, easily dismissed most of the reported sightings, but it stated at least one, showing a disc-shaped object in flight over Oregon, is classed as difficult to explain in a conventional way. The study determined that the photos were genuine and the Trents were truthful. It specifically declared that this is one of the few UFO reports in which all factors investigated from genetic to psychological and physical appear to be consistent with the assertion that an extraordinary flying object, silvery and metallic disc-shaped, tens of meters in diameter, and evidently something, flew within sight of 2 credible witnesses. So explain to me why NASA has never released a statement on this? They're keeping pretty dang quiet, and so is everyone else. What can I say? Secrets make me cranky. In 3rd place, we have life on Venus. So back in the 1970s and 1980s, the Soviet Union sent several uncrewed missions to study the planet Venus. 10 of these Venera probes landed on the surface of the planet and were able to transmit data and images for a few minutes before succumbing to the planet's extreme atmosphere. In 2012, the Russian news service RIA Novosti reported that Leonid, I cannot say his last name but it starts with a K, a scientist who worked on the Venera missions, suggested that the photographs showed living objects moving around on the planet's surface. According to Leonid, certain objects resembled a disk, a black flap, and a scorpion, which emerge, fluctuate, and disappear, referring to their changing location on photographs and traces on the ground. The editors of Solar System Research published an editorial comment and a number of commentary articles from other scientists in their September of 2012 publication of Issue 5, Volume 46 of the journal, to be specific. The issue also includes a second article from Leonid, in which he claims to identify several other life forms and speculates regarding the apparent rich diversity of life around the landing site. It's a lot more rare to get alien spottings from folks outside of the US, and I feel like NASA is just out there covering them up. So I'm glad this one made it to the interwebs, even though folks have tried to explain it away. In second place, we have a government whistleblower. Alrighty. Before I get into it, I'd like to elaborate on how credible this story is. So, the whistleblower in question, David Charles Grudge, is a veteran of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, or NGA, and the National Reconnaissance Office, NRO for short, where he served as a representative to the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force from 2019 to 2021. From late 2021 to July of 2022, he was the NGA co-lead for UAP analysis and its representative to the task force led by the Department of the Navy, under the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. Whew. At the NGO, David served as a Senior Intelligence Capabilities Integration Officer, cleared at the top secret compartment information level. From 2016 to 2021, he served with the National Reconnaissance Office as Senior Intelligence Officer and led the production of the NRO Director's Daily Briefing. He was a GS-15 civilian, the military equivalent of a colonel, and has numerous awards and decorations for his participation in covert and clandestine operations to advance American security. I don't know about y'all, but I think this is our most credible witness yet. So David said the recoveries of partial fragments through and up to intact vehicles have been made for decades through present day by the government, its allies, and defense contractors. He said that craft recovery operations are ongoing at various levels of activity, and that individuals on these UAP programs have approached him in his official capacity and disclosed their concerns regarding a multitude of wrongdoings, such as illegal contracting against the federal acquisitions regulations, and other criminality and the suppression of information across a qualified industrial base and academia. Associates who vouched for David said his information was highly sensitive, providing evidence that materials from objects of non-human origin are in the possession of highly secret black government programs. Wow. Multiple government witnesses to boot. Although locations, program names, and other specific data remain classified, the Inspector General and Intelligence Committee staff were provided with these details. Analysis has determined that the objects retrieved are of non-human origin based on the vehicle morphologies and material science testing and the possession of unique atomic arrangements and radiological signatures. The investigation was centered on extensive interviews with high-level intelligence officials, some of whom are directly involved with the program, and they corroborated his information. David is certain that the information has been illegally withheld from Congress to intentionally thwart legitimate congressional oversight of the UAP program. He has also filed a complaint alleging that he suffered illegal retaliation for his confidential disclosures. In his statements, David claimed that UFO legacy programs have, long been concealed within multiple agencies, nesting UAP activities in conventional secret access programs, without appropriate reporting to various oversight authorities. According to the unclassified complaint, in July of 2021, he had confidentially provided classified information to the Department of Defense Inspector General concerning the withholding of UAP-related information from Congress. Christopher Mellon, who spent nearly 20 years in the U.S. intelligence community and served as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, has worked with Congress for years on unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP for short. He has mentioned that a number of well-placed current and former officials have shared detailed information with him, including the location where a craft was abandoned and recovered. He claims the reason more folks haven't come forward is due to a lack of trust in the leadership of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, established by Congress. The assumption that the United States alone has bullied the other nations into maintaining the secrecy for nearly a century continues to uphold as the primary consensus amongst the public at large. So you're telling me that credible US government officials have been adamant that the government is hiding things? Sounds right to me. In first place, we have Viking lander aliens. A woman who claims to be a former NASA employee claims to have seen evidence of the most monumental cover-up in space history back in 1979, when she saw two human figures in spacesuits walk calmly towards the Viking lander across the Martian surface. Going by Jackie, she claimed to have been working for NASA, handling downlink telemetry from the lander, which was the first vehicle to send back images of Mars' surface, when she saw two people walking on the surface. She and 6 colleagues were watching the Viking rover, bustling about all over various screens when she spotted 2 men in spacesuits, which were not the bulky suits that they normally used at the time, but looked safe. They came over the horizon, walking, right to the Viking Explorer. Naturally, some folks have claimed that the humans may have just been there to polish the lander's solar panels, but that seems a little odd, considering if there were, just humans there, they could have just filled the lander with petrol instead, or take the photographs themselves. Jackie claims that while the folks were maintaining the equipment, their video feed was suddenly cut off without explanation, and when they rushed upstairs for answers, the door leading to the room controlling the equipment was locked, with paper taped over every crevice to avoid anything being seen. Hello? Suspicious red flag alert.
Number 5. Weird signal from the Milky Way. Astronomers have been studying fast radio bursts, or FRBs, that's a little acronym there to make me sound smart, for decades outside of our galaxy in the hopes of someday making some contact with our extraterrestrial friends and saying hello. Well, decades of research might have paid off when on April 28th, 2020, 2 ground-based radio telescopes discovered an intense pulse of radio waves within the Milky Way. This event was the first time an FRB had ever been detected within the galaxy, and somehow, despite this burst only lasting for a millisecond, it was apparently almost impossible to miss. I know what all of these words mean for sure. The burst was 30,000 light years away from Earth, so, about a stone's throw up that way, really just a block away on the cosmic scale. It was first discovered by the CHIME, a fancy acronym for the Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment, as well as another project, the STARE, the Survey for Transient Astronomical Radio Emission. I just woke up, man, and I don't really know what these acronyms mean either, but I'm having a lot of fun saying them for you, and I hope you enjoy that. This discovery was notable as well for being the most energetic radio blast these astronomers have ever seen, but it was also one of the closest. Usually when we're talking about radio frequencies all the way up in space, these things are like billions of years of light years away, which does not make them particularly easy to study. You're getting a real far away glance. But if there's one on our doorstep, way easier to focus on. So what is this weird signal coming out of the Milky Way? Is this aliens trying to send a text and the reception's a bit foggy? Here's the trouble. Astronomers don't know for sure just yet. 3 years later, we are still not 100%. There is a small possibility, a disappointing one, that this signal could be man-made somehow and it's broadcasting all the way out here. But if not, this could very well be a promising sign of life from across the galaxy. And if you're looking for more alien content, we have got more UFO sightings than probably any other YouTube channel on this site, and I'm pretty sure of that. But if space stuff ain't your jam, we got cryptids, monsters, mythologies, true crime, fake crime, stories too good to be true and too true to be good. So click through, stay subscribed, stay screaming, and stay watching this video, okay? All the way to the end. I got a little surprise for you, I promise. Alright, moving on. Number 4, the sounds of Ganymede. Have you ever heard a planet talk? I don't mean like going for a hike and communing with trees and talking to nature or anything like that, man, okay? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about literally hearing the sounds a planet produces. Now you're gonna have to bear with me because I don't know if you can tell by looking at me, but I am not a rocket scientist. I'm barely even a YouTube host. But as I understand, when Juno, a NASA satellite, was orbiting Ganymede, one of Jupiter's moons, NASA discovered that Ganymede had its own magnetosphere. Ganymede was radiating this strange plasma wave of energy that, when it is recorded and played back, sounds absolutely terrifying. This really tickles the H.P. Lovecraft fan in my heart to be able to hear the sounds a planet is making out in the cosmos. So we're gonna play it for you now. Just take a listen to the audio of this and try to ever sleep again. I dare you. I found that pretty scary personally. I don't know, reminds me of my insignificance in the galaxy. But more than a few people on YouTube pointed out, if you just close your eyes and imagine that that's R2-D2 making all of those noises, it's not particularly scary at all. And I'm probably never gonna be able to unhear that. So is this proof of alien life hiding out inside of Jupiter's moon? Well, not quite. This is a natural phenomenon. It's definitely mysterious though, and it makes you think about the size of the cosmos and how small we are on a galactic scale, but other than that, this thing coming from Ganymede is explainable, if not a little bit confusing. I just wanted to toss it like smack dab in the middle of this list about alien speculation to keep things a little fun, fresh, and flirty for everybody. Number 3, the USS Jellyfish. That's a fun name, isn't it? That's kind of fun. The USS Jellyfish kind of calls to mind like a big ship, maybe like a cruise ship taking an all-included trip through the Bahamas. Well, not to burst your dreams of an island getaway, but the actual USS Jellyfish is a celestial object that astronomers have found that has had them asking questions that are really stinging. That was forced. That was really forced. That was not natural at all. I'm sorry. The USS Jellyfish is a giant mass of plasma that has taken the shape of a jellyfish. At least that's the best way we can see it. It's kind of like an ink blot test. You see what you want to see. It's some 300 million light years away and is a fancy radio signal called a polyphenix, which is a term scientists use for a radio frequency up in space that they don't really have all the answers about. The giant blob in particular is so unusual that when astronomers initially discovered it, they were writing it off completely, assuming it was an accident or an error in their data. The researcher who first discovered it, one Torrance Hodgson, captured the subject in 2017 using the Murchison Wide Array, an incredibly powerful Australian ground telescope. And when he wrote on the subject, he told his colleagues, ignore the obvious bug in this data. And it was only when they were really pushing that they began to notice there was something more to it than these formal studies earlier suggested. Now, I'm gonna be honest. The full-scale implications of the space jellyfish are a little bit above my pay grade. I can kind of just look at it and be like, well, that's kind of weird. I can read to you the scientists, theories for what they think created the jellyfish, but just know I only kind of half know what I'm talking about here. Scientists believe that the jellyfish was formed over the course of 2 billion years, structured smack dab in the middle between two galaxies that have been spewing out enormous amounts of light and plasma due to intense interactions between black holes and any materials that end up falling around them, eventually creating one gigantic cosmic jellyfish floating around in the astral planes. Number 2, something unusual. Recently, a team of astronomers discovered something unusual while they were mapping out the universe, which is my favorite start to a point I have ever read on this channel. You guys know when you're mapping out the universe, then you accidentally see something unusual? Ugh, I absolutely hate when that happens. Anyway, this mysterious unusual object floats about 4,000 light years away, very close by. You can practically wave and see it. And it's pulsing strange bursts of energy out of it roughly every 20 minutes on the dot. You can set your watch to this. Somebody up in space forget to turn the oven timer off? Natasha Hurley-Walker is an astrophysicist from the Curtin University in Australia, same university that discovered that jellyfish, coincidentally, and was the leading researcher on this study. She said in a public statement that this object was appearing and disappearing over a few hours during our observations, and said that it was completely unexpected. It was kind of spooky for an astronomer because there's nothing known in the sky that does that. Let me take over for a second right here and tell you right now, on Top 5 Scary, if you can't tell what something weird is in the sky, it's an alien. Okay? You got an alien on your hands. So we have to assume that's what's going on here. Alongside this bizarre cosmic alarm clock, the team discovered a fossil plasma source, something that was created by powerful blasts of a bygone black hole that has since faded into the darkness. And I loved saying that. A black hole that has faded into the darkness? That's poetic. Does that not sound like where the heart of like cosmic evil in the universe would be? Does that not sound a little bit like it's something out of a Lovecraft or Stephen King book? A fossilized plasma created by the blast of a black hole that has faded into the darkness? That sounds like something a guy in a black robe would read out as part of a prophecy for the end of the universe. And number 1, Proxima Centauri. If there was ever going to be concrete signs of alien life, I think it would definitely come from a place called Proxima Centauri. Listen to that. That already sounds like it's from like a great Deep Space Nine episode. Recently, astronomers exploring for signs of life beyond Earth discovered a currently unexplained radio signal that was broadcasting from Proxima Centauri, a small red star roughly 4.2 million light years away. That's like right next door, man. If this wasn't exciting enough for you, there's radio signals coming from a strange star that no one can explain, seemingly, And surrounding these stars is a planet that NASA believes has a temperate and rocky surface just like our beautiful Earth, leading to some wild speculation all around. The project is dubbed Breakthrough Listen, very cool code name, and it was a decade-long search for alien broadcasts from the nearest million stars, just in case anybody's been trying to reach us about our planet's extended warranty. This radio signal in question has been formally dubbed BLC-1 when referred to scientifically. Now, this signal was first discovered in May 2019. It's not quite the be-all and end-all proof of aliens just yet, as much as I want it to be. Sophia Sheik, the team member leading Breakthrough Listen, says she suspects that the broadcast could end up being human in origin somehow, theorizing that it could be something as simple as like a plane traveling overhead their equipment or faulty electronics somewhere getting wires tangled. Would that not be beyond embarrassing if you're a group of scientists, astronomers, and you think you've found proof of alien life, but all it is somebody forgot to take their phone off airplane mode and they've just been getting notifications for Candy Crush and it's messing with your equipment? Still, it's something to research, and it's still one of the most exciting things to happen in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence in a long time. And I hope we keep looking for extraterrestrial intelligence out there, because there sure ain't anybody down here. I messed up that joke.
In 5th place, we have a mysterious radio signal. So in February of 2003, astronomers with the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Project, SETI for short, used a massive telescope in Puerto Rico to re-examine the 200 sections of the sky which had all previously yielded unexplained radio signals. So these signals had all disappeared, except for one which had become stronger. The signal, widely thought to be the best candidate yet for an alien contact, comes from a spot between the constellations of Pisces and Aries, where there are no obvious stars or planets, named SHGB02+14A. The signal has a frequency of about 1,420 megahertz. So this happens to be one of the main frequencies at which hydrogen, the most common element in the universe, readily absorbs and emits energy. Some astronomers have argued that extraterrestrials trying to advertise their presence would be likely to transmit at this frequency, and SETI researchers conventionally scan this part of the radio spectrum. So the telescope has only observed the signal for about a minute in total, which is not long enough for astronomers to analyze it thoroughly. I can already hear y'all now in the comments, but Alexa, how was this scary? So this contributes to the theory that I very much support, that aliens are kind of treating us like animals in a zoo, constantly monitoring and interfering only when need be. Personally, I know I already feel like I'm under a magnifying glass on a regular basis. I don't need sky aliens watching me. Thanks! In 4th place, we have the Viking Mars lander. So taking it all the way back to 1976, when tests performed on Martian soil samples by NASA's Viking landers hinted at chemical evidence of life. 2 Viking landers became the first US spacecrafts from Earth to touch down on Mars. They took the first high-resolution images of the planet, surveyed the planet's geographical features, and analyzed the geological composition of the atmosphere and surface. Perhaps most interestingly, they also performed experiments that searched for signs of microbial life in Martian soil. Overall, these life detection experiments produced surprising and contradictory results. So one experiment, the labeled release or LR experiment, showed that the Martian soil tested positive for metabolism, which is a sign that on Earth would almost certainly suggest the presence of life. However, a related experiment found no trace of organic material, suggesting the absence of life. The LR experiment that reported the positive result mixed soil with radioactive carbon-labeled nutrients and then tested for the production of radioactive methane gas. The production of radioactive methane suggested that something in the soil was metabolizing the nutrients and producing radioactive gas. But since other experiments on board failed to find any evidence of life, NASA declared the result a false positive. So at this point, I would hope that anyone watching this knows that that negative statement, in a sense, only strengthens our arguments. In the 40 years since these experiments, scientists have been able to reconcile the conflicting results, and a small minority of scientists argue that the Viking results were positive for life on Mars. One prominent proponent of this view is Gilbert Levin, experimenter of the Viking LR experiment. At first, Gilbert thought that the LR results were unclear, and stated merely that the results were consistent with biology. However, in 1997, after many years of further experiments on Earth, along with new discoveries on Mars, which NASA has now declared habitable by the way, and the discovery of microorganisms living under conditions on Earth as severe as those on Mars, he and his Viking co-experimenter, Dr. Patricia A. Stratt, have argued that the Mars results are best explained by living organisms. Sadly, all future experiments will have an unavoidable drawback: the potential for contamination by previous landers. In this regard, the Viking landers were unique in that they were the only pristine Martian life detection experiment that we will ever have. In third place, we have Roswell. Look, whether you like it or not, Roswell is easily the most popular and controversial alien and UFO spotting to this day, and there is so much lore around it to not mention it constantly. Former CIA agent Oscar Wayne Wolf claims he saw both living aliens, retrieved parts, and remains of alien ships throughout his career. The agent made these shocking claims about the infamous Area 51, claiming he caught a glimpse of an extraterrestrial spacecraft and a living alien. The 77-year-old man was speaking to UFO researcher Richard Dolan, but concerned about giving up his true identity at the time, went by the Anonymous. So after the agent made his claim, it was then shared at the Citizens Hearing on Disclosure held at the National Press Club in Washington in 2013. The agent is understood to have used a fake name throughout his career in the CIA, so the chances of his real name having been used in the account were never high. He worked for the CIA between 1957 and 1960, where he spent time in a military base in the southeast US where they analyzed physical evidence. In 2013, fearing he might soon pass away, the Anonymous came forward for one more conversation, this time with, Richard Dolan. He claimed that he was taken into Area 51 to look at items allegedly found and retrieved by the US government. He also claimed among them was a flying saucer that crashed and landed in July of 1947 in Roswell, New Mexico. He stated that there were live aliens there and that he was taken to the S4 facility in Area 51. In his statement, he described seeing different saucer crafts in the facility, with the first place he visited holding the Roswell craft, and it was kind of crashed up, but apparently every alien that was in it died except for a few. The Roswell craft was also really strange because it looked like really heavy aluminum foil. At S4, he viewed the autopsy film, where the colonel on screen said, "What we've got in here is we're interviewing a gray alien." So the Anonymous had no idea he was going to see the film, saying the alien didn't look human as far as the skin tone and basically the shape of it, and the size of its head, compared with a normal human. Following the interview that he gave publicly, he was warned by the CIA not to conduct any further interviews or disclosures. Well then, if you never see me again, that'll explain it. In second place, we have a 2017 report in the New York Times. Yep, a 2017 report in the New York Times on bizarre sightings kept secret by the US military is the reason the US government now produces an annual report on UAP sightings, and Congress created a system for government whistleblowers to report sightings. More recently, two of the journalists who wrote that report have taken one giant leap forward and reported extraordinary new allegations. In June of 2023, they described jaw-dropping new claims from a decorated former combat officer who served as the US Department of Defense's representative to a UAP task force from 2019 to 2021. David Grudge was quoted in their print report and in a later televised interview saying the United States has in its possession an aircraft of non-human origin, and not just one aircraft, he says, but many. He says the discoveries are numerous, involving everything from wreckage up to intact vehicles, and he says these items have been collected for decades by the US government, by allies, and by defense contractors. He says this information is being illegally withheld from members of Congress, and he's alerted them, as well as the Inspector General for the American intelligence community. So authors who reported on his allegations for the science site The Debrief quoted other US officials vouching for David's credibility, including Jonathan Gray, an officer in the intelligence community with a top secret clearance, who stated as follows: "The non-human intelligence phenomenon is real. We are not alone. Retrievals of this kind are not limited to the United States. This is a global phenomenon, and yet a global solution continues to elude us. Once again, if scientists and professionals weren't scared, this wouldn't all be kept secret. Just saying." Not like I consider myself an expert on this subject at this point or anything. And in our first place, we have the disappearance of experts. So back in 1968, a group of Soviet engineers who were working in the isolated region of Cao Bang, North Vietnam, in hopes of building a hydroelectric power plant, suddenly heard a rumble of engines overhead. And thinking that it was an American B-52 plane, they all ran out of their tents, but were surprised to instead see a black angular diamond-shaped object approximately twice the size of the moon, and which emitted a greenish-blue light. Moments later, a fiery comet-shaped object emerging somewhere on Earth struck the diamond-shaped object, creating a bright flash that blinded everyone, and then a powerful shockwave knocked the Russian hydrologists down and tore their tents apart, sweeping away all their equipment. Fortunately, no one was seriously hurt, but the explosion produced deep concern amongst those present. The original consensus was that a small nuclear device had exploded, since for several hours neither the radio or other communications equipment worked, producing only severe static. It wasn't until the next morning that it was possible for the group to contact their central base and report the incident. The scientists promised a full report of events and visited the closest village where, strangely, there was no sign of destruction or explosion, and the inhabitants only thought that they heard a very loud thunderstorm. So after about 2 days and about a kilometer away from their base camp, the scientists found a black half-sphere-shaped object about 3 meters in diameter. So the surface of the sphere was completely black, and it seemed that light did not reflect from its surface. Also, the sphere did not cast a shadow, with the rays of the low evening sun seeming to go around the strange object, falling on the high grass around it. By touch, the sphere seemed kind of cool and a little bit slippery, as if doused with soapy water. One of the men attempted to scratch the surface of the sphere with a sharp sharp knife and was unable to leave a mark. They then notified their central base about their finding and received instructions from their main base to set up a protective perimeter around the object and guard it until a special group arrived at the site. They were strictly warned to stay 20 meters away from the sphere, so the entire group of 5 men camped exactly 20 meters from the sphere. I would have probably stayed a little farther for safety's sake, but alrighty. They had no idea what the sphere could be, and guessed it was some kind of new weaponry of either Soviet or American origin. One of the specialists, Boris Ivanov, wrote in his journal that the men spent the evening staring uneasily at the object, in the light of their bonfire, with their carbines ready, just in case of any problems, waiting for the Special Forces group to show up and take control of the situation. At one point in the evening, one of the men, named Vyacheslav, rose and went into the brushwood for a prosaic outing, while the rest of the men remained at camp. When he didn't return after a too long period of time, the men began to nervously call out his name, but he did not respond. Even after searching the area with flashlights in the direction of the sphere, the men could not find Vyacheslav. Concerned and afraid, the rest of the men decided to not look any further and return to the bonfire. After about an hour, another man, Peter K., silently rose and also went into the brushwood, exactly in the same direction that Vyacheslav had taken. He seemed to move uncomfortably, rocking back and forth, apparently very drowsy. Yep, you guessed it, Peter K. also never returned. This time the remaining men did not search for Peter, but simply sat and waited. After 2 more hours, Vladimir M. felt called to the sphere. And yep, he also never came back. At this point, only 2 men remained, Boris and Sergei. Suddenly, Sergei's face became distorted. He rose like a marionette and meandered away into the dark, in the direction of the strange sphere. Moments later, Boris found himself tempted to move, and terrified, he grabbed his carbine and shot himself in the leg in an attempt to disable himself so he wouldn't walk away to an uncertain fate. As a result of the pain, he passed out, only waking up in the morning when the specialists arrived. They found him, half conscious by the now extinguished bonfire, having lost a lot of red bodily fluid, but still alive. And by this time, the sphere had disappeared, along with his comrades. Add that to another reason why I'm going to continue to avoid camping as a pastime.
And number 5, Jupiter's magnetosphere. NASA's spacecraft Juno picked up some of Jupiter's noises as it entered the planet's magnetic field. Now, according to NASA, the magnetosphere is where the movement of particles in space is controlled by what's going on inside of the planet. Juno's principal investigator Scott Bolton said of the event back in June of 2016, I quote, "We've just crossed the boundary into Jupiter's home turf. We're closing in fast on the planet itself and already gaining valuable data." Now, this recording captured the encounter with the bow shock over the course of 2 hours, and it's pretty mysterious and eerie sounding. Moving on to number 4, plasma waves. As NASA aptly stated, space is not empty, nor is it silent. Nobody can hear you scream in space. Space contains a whole lot of energetic charged particles, which behave a lot differently than what we have on Earth. In magnetic fields, including the ones that surround Earth, there are particles that are constantly tossed around by the motion of electromagnetic waves that are known as plasma waves. And the ones that exist in space make some really interesting noises. Give it a listen. Some sound like roaring waves, while others sound a little bit like whistling. I think the whistling might even be a little bit creepier. Moving on to number 3, comet encounter. In February of 2011, NASA's Stardust spacecraft flew by a comet called Tempel 1 and pelted a bunch of small rocks and dust particles at it. This is what it sounds like. Now, the full audio track is only a fraction of what NASA says was an approximate 5,000 total impacts on the spacecraft over the course of around 11 minutes. Would not want to be that spacecraft. Scientists believe that the flying debris was formed by fragmenting balls of ice and dust. And what's even cooler, this actually helped inform a theory that icy dust balls that leave a comet continually break up in space. Imagine breaking up with your comet only to slam right into a spacecraft. Rough life. And at number 2, Ganymede. Back in 1996, on June 27th, NASA's Galileo spacecraft made its first flyby of Ganymede, which is Jupiter's largest moon. Now, the sound that you're about to hear are the translated radio signals that represent data from Galileo's plasma wave experiment instrument. Pretty freaky, eh? Galileo's encounter with Ganymede was pretty monumental in the way that we look at our solar system, and it discovered many things about Jupiter and its moons, including that Jupiter has an intense radiation belt above its cloud tops, helium in roughly the same concentration as the Sun, and a lot of extensive and rapid resurfacing of the moon load due to volcanism and Ganymede's magnetic field. Neat stuff. And finally, in our number 1 spot, Saturn's radio emissions. This one is perhaps the most eerie. So Saturn is a source of intense radio emissions according to NASA. They monitored it with the Cassini spacecraft, and the radio waves it picked up were closely related to the auroras near the poles of Saturn, which are kind of similar to the northern and southern lights that we have on Earth. Take a listen. Sounds like something straight out of a horror film, doesn't it? Ugh, nightmare fuel. According to the researchers working with Cassini, I quote, "All of the structures we observe in Saturn's radio spectrum are giving us clues about what might be going on in the source of the radio emission above Saturn's auroras. We believe that the changing frequencies are related to tiny radio sources moving up and down along Saturn's magnetic fields." Now at the time, scientists couldn't agree on a theory to explain the phenomenon, but noted how amazing it was that the radio emissions on Saturn sounded so similar to what was on Earth. Weird.
Number 5 on this list is the Fermi paradox. This one is all about aliens, but maybe not how you might expect. Science Focus says, in 1950, Enrico Fermi, the man who built the first nuclear reactor, was having lunch in the canteen of the Los Alamos bomb lab in New Mexico when he suddenly said, "Where is everybody?" Everyone around the table knew exactly what he meant. Decades later, Fermi's question was examined independently by the American physicists Michael Hart and Frank Tipler. Hart considered aliens spreading throughout our Milky Way, and Tipler considered self-replicating machines that, on arrival at a planetary system, exploit the resources to build 2 copies of themselves that continue voyaging. Both concluded that even at modest speeds of travel, every star in the galaxy would be visited in a fraction of the age of the Milky Way. As Fermi realized, the aliens should be here on Earth. They do not appear to be, though. This became the Fermi paradox. Hundreds of explanations have been proposed. They include the ideas that we are the first intelligence to arise in the galaxy and so are totally alone, and that we are a nursery world off limits to advanced civilizations that might adversely affect our development. A more mundane possibility is that there is no paradox because any signs of visitation in the distant past would be erased by wind, rain, and geological processes. Recently, however, a team led by Dr. Jonathan Carroll Nellenbach of the University of Rochester, New York, has proposed that our sun may simply have been bypassed by a wave of extraterrestrial expansion. So why are aliens not here? Have they already been here and we didn't even know? Or did they just bypass our solar system altogether? Or is all of this nonsense and the universe is just so big that they haven't gotten to us yet? It's certainly something interesting to think about. Considering the universe is infinite and there are so many places and planets we don't know about, it seems ridiculous to think that we're the only intelligent life or the first intelligent life in everything. Like, that's as if we hit the biggest lottery ever. Comment down below what you think about this alien question and why aren't they here yet? Number 4 on this list is dark matter. You've definitely heard the term dark matter get thrown around a bunch before, and you've probably wondered, what the heck is it? Well, if that sounds like you, then you aren't alone. Scientists all across the globe are still wondering what dark matter is and the purpose that it serves. Science Focus says dark matter gives out no light or too little light for us to detect. We know it exists because we see the effect of its gravity on the visible stars and galaxies. For instance, the Milky Way could not have dragged in enough matter to make its stars in the 13.82 billion years since the Big Bang without there being a lot of invisible matter whose extra gravity speeded things up. The European Space Agency's Planck satellite found that dark matter accounts for 26.8% of the mass energy of the universe compared with the 4.3% of normal atomic energy. It therefore outweighs the visible stars and galaxies by a factor of 6. Puzzlingly, no Earth-based experiment has found any evidence of dark matter despite decades of searching. It is conceivable that it's not our theory of matter that needs modification, but our theory of gravity. Or that dark matter is not a fluid made of a single particle, but is complex like the atomic matter we see around us. Maybe the universe is filled with dark stars and dark planets and dark life. There is an entire universe of dark matter that we don't even know about. Like, what the heck is this stuff and what's it composed of? Why can't our eyes see it? Why doesn't something this dense even show up? It's all very confusing and nobody can figure it out right now. Dark matter is one of the biggest mysteries in the universe, and understanding what it is and how it works could completely change our understanding of gravity and matter as a whole. Hopefully NASA can get a grasp on it soon and the mystery can finally be solved. Number 3 on this list is the central black hole. At the center of almost every single known galaxy in the universe, which there are about 2 trillion of, there is a huge black hole just chilling in the middle. These aren't your everyday typical black holes though, they are gargantuan in size and weight. Some of these beasts weigh around 50 billion times that of our sun. Just an absolutely insane number that our brains truly can't really comprehend. But how did this absolute unit of a black hole get there, and why is it so big? Well, NASA doesn't really know, and they are desperately trying to find out. Black holes are one of the most interesting things in our universe, and one of the things that we know very little about. The question of where does a black hole actually go to will probably never be answered because we'll never be able to go inside without getting completely crushed into oblivion. But figuring out why they're in the middle of pretty much every notable galaxy is important. If we can understand this, then we can understand how a galaxy is formed and potentially the lifespan of certain galaxies. Also, knowing what creates these black holes will help us better understand them and see if our planet will ever be at risk of such a disaster. Granted, maybe ignorance is bliss in this case, because even if we knew a black hole was coming, there's really nothing that we'd be able to do about it. Number 2 on this list is dark energy. For a long time, the only force that was thought to be operating on the entire universe was gravity. This was everywhere in the universe and decided pretty much how things played out. Gravity is not alone anymore though, or at least since the discovery of dark energy. Dark energy is this invisible force that is everywhere in the universe and is partially responsible for speeding up the expansion of said universe. Apparently this energy overtook gravity 5 billion years ago as the dominant force that's expanding the universe, and that's why it's happening in the first place. The thing is, we have no idea what this dark energy is or why it's here. Similar to dark matter, it feels like this has just appeared, and because we can't see it or have no idea of its origin, we have no idea how much weight it really has on us and our current laws of physics. Apparently 2/3 of the energy mass of the universe is made up of this stuff, and we have no idea about it. That's kind of scary if you think about it, and it puts in perspective how little we know about things. Oftentimes, I think we fall into a trap assuming that our species is far more advanced than it actually is, but when you consider that we have no idea where 2/3 of the energy mass in our universe came from, or what it is, it really brings you back to reality. I feel like this might be one of the hardest mysteries on this list to solve, and it's gonna take a while. And number 1 on this list is the multiverse. What seems to be the staple of a plotline of any good sci-fi movie these days is the multiverse, something that we truly know nothing about. The theory is basically that there is an infinite number of universes with an infinite number of possibilities and outcomes, and it's all just freaking infinite and honestly kind of hurts my brain to think about for very long. But is there any substance to this theory? How will we be able to know if it's true or not, and what would that mean for us? So the multiverse theory all comes from another theory called inflation theory. Inflation theory is the thinking that in basically a second, when our universe was just a baby, everything started inflating and growing super fast, expanding outwards in all directions. Now it's thought that the inflation of our universe stopped 14 billion years ago, but that when our universe stopped, the beginning of another started, and so on and so forth. It's very complicated, and in all honesty, I don't really understand all of it, but that's the bare bones. There's also the thinking that because life is so hard to support, as in you need so many things to go right in the universe, it seems extremely unlikely that if there is only one universe, life would have actually formed. If there were multiple or infinite universes, there would be enough chances though that one or more are bound to have the necessary things to create life. Either way, if this is true, then it obviously changes a lot of things about how we view our universe and the role we play in it. Maybe there's another version of you just chilling in a totally alternate universe right now, except instead of hands you have wings or something. A little ridiculous, I know, but if universes are infinite, then you never know.
Number 5. Hypnotic regression. Many people who claim to have been abducted by aliens are unable to remember a lot of the specific details of their abductions. Because of this and the public stigma against people with alien experiences, many people choose to never come forward, or their stories are written off as delusion. But in the spirit of giving people the benefit of the doubt, let's talk about a certain woman's experience with hypnotic regression. A woman who claims she was abducted by aliens was put under hypnosis in order to give a documentary crew information about the visitors from other worlds. When asked how aliens are able to travel at such incredible speeds, she responded with the following: "I can't explain it, but it's like if they want to get from one point to another point, they remove what's in between, so they don't have to travel that distance. They are instantly from there to there." When asked why aliens are studying humans, the response was, "They are very wary of humankind. Mankind is progressing technology-wise, and soon he's going to come across technology that will allow him to peel back the layers of dimensions. And they want to know all about man for their own benefit. Man's warlike, aggressive, an animal. He's in possession of technology that is more than he is. There's no balance. And they're very wary that he's now on the threshold of many breakthroughs, one of which is peeling back dimensions. It's like an onion skin. You peel back one layer, and there's another one underneath, and another one underneath, and another one underneath. The same with dimensions. They're scared. Do aliens really study humanity out of a fear of what we will do once we discover interdimensional travel? And if so, how do they feel about all the UFOs we have apparently shot down? What do species historically do with groups that they are afraid of? What fate awaits the human race at the hands of these interplanetary visitors? Number 4. Sam the Sandown Clown. Our next story comes from the January-February edition of the British UFO Research Association Journal and concerns an anonymous man going by the alias of Mr. Y, who claims that one October night in the year 1970, he was driving to visit a friend when he saw something hovering over the swamp to his right. It was a huge UFO with several different multicolored orb-like lights brightly illuminating the craft. He got out of his vehicle to observe the craft for a moment and then continued on his way. He looked out his window and realized that the craft was now following him, its lights spinning. Mr. Y got to his friend's house, and the friend was amazed at the guests that had followed him there, before disappearing into a nearby tree line. For years, Mr. Y would see the red orbs following him from time to time, watching him and stalking him. Doubting that anyone would believe him, he kept these encounters to himself until 1973, when his 7-year-old daughter Faye and her friend were playing near Lake Common Road when they heard an eerie wailing sound. They followed the sound to a nearby meadow, and the wailing stopped. They walked over a small bridge when suddenly a blue-gloved hand with 3 fingers appeared from under the bridge. They looked in the small river and saw a strange figure standing in the middle holding a book. He was described as being 7 feet tall and without a neck. He was wearing an odd and tattered costume consisting of a green tunic with a red collar, white pants, and a pointed hat with a black ball on top and 2 antennae. He had a pale white face, lips that never moved, red hair, and triangle holes for eyes. The children watched in shock as the figure hobbled over to a strange metal hut. Not long after, they saw the figure again as he wailed, and then spoke into a microphone asking if they were still there. He then communicated by writing in his book, saying that his name was Sam. They asked if he was a man, and he said no. They asked if he was a ghost, and he said, "Well, not really. But, in a way, I am." He said that there were others like him and that he was afraid of being attacked by humans. He invited them into his metal hut, which was filled with wooden furniture and elaborate knobs. The children hung out with Sam for an hour before leaving, and a year later, she told her father about the encounter, telling him that there had been men nearby fixing a post who had acted as though they could not see the strange creature. He had trouble believing her, but he had had enough experiences with aliens of his own that he had to consider the possibility that it was real. Did Mr. Y's daughter really see a strange alien in the woods, or is this just the overactive imagination of a child? In an age where spacecraft are being seen all over the world at an alarming rate, we really can't rule anything out. And what of the UFO stalking Mr. Y? What were they hoping to see, and why was he selected to be the subject of their curiosity? This mystery will likely never be fully unraveled. Number 3. Aliens take a baby. Our next entry comes courtesy of phantomsandmonsters.com and describes a 14-year-old visiting the home of some seniors and seeing something more terrifying than they could possibly imagine. As they themselves told it, I witnessed an alien abduction back in 2002 when I was 14. A friend of mine wanted me to help her grandparents set up their computer. I said sure and rode my bicycle to their house. I got there and clouds appeared, so I decided to make this a pretty quick visit. I set up the computer and installed some software for them, showing them all how it works and such. They go back and sit on the couch while I get my backpack to get ready to leave, as their other granddaughter, who is about 6 years old, was sleeping in the other room. All of a sudden, a cold breeze went through the room. It was odd, as all the doors and windows were shut. The grandparents looked towards the kitchen, and what I saw made me freeze in place. There were 3 creatures standing in the kitchen. 2 of them were short, gray alien creatures, with thicker necks than usually described, with the eyes closer to the sides of their heads. They wore silver jumpsuits. In between them was a taller creature that looked like a humanoid mantis, wearing a black robe with a yellow stripe going down the middle. They walked to another room, and a minute later returned with the robed creature, carrying the granddaughter in its arms. It's looking at me, and I get the feeling it knows who I am. I don't know why I got the feeling, but I did. I was very scared. The grandparents were looking at them too, but not doing anything. I thought, screw this, and fought off all the fear I could and clumsily charged towards them. I didn't even make 3 steps before the grandfather stopped me and told me they will bring her back. The creatures didn't move and continued to look at me. I couldn't get any more words out of my throat because I didn't even know what to think at this point. All of a sudden, a light stretched around them and they vanished. An odd glow remained for a few seconds before fading. After a minute of awkward silence and the grandfather repeating, "She will be brought back," soon I decided to leave. I rode my bicycle home as fast as I could while looking back, hoping that nothing was following me. I didn't sleep that night after I got home. The next day, I told my friend what had happened, and she told me it has happened before. The grandparents and other family members have tried to stop it, but to no avail. They just accepted it with a look of defeat and moved on. The granddaughter was brought back after a few hours. Not long after I witnessed this incident, their whole family moved elsewhere. I've heard from other people who claimed to experience similar events, and I feel they are legit. Why are aliens taking babies away from their families? What are they hoping to learn? And is there some way to stop them? One can hope, but it seems unlikely. Number 2, dream or abduction. This next story is from an anonymous Reddit user who claimed to be abducted and experimented on by aliens before waking up at home with injuries related to the experiment. As he told the story, in July of 2015, back when I was 19, I lived in a house in Southport, Sacramento with 3 other friends. I woke up one night to a light coming through the ceiling of my room, and it lifted me out of my bed. Next thing I know, I'm in some kind of chair and unable to control my body, like I was drugged with something. There were guys that were not human men, but gray people with large black almond-shaped eyes doing stuff with what seemed like medical instruments and machines. I was very terrified. I was unarmed, naked, unable to move. I was so scared. One of them was touching the machine that put the tube down my throat and into my stomach. His hand got close to my face because he had to adjust something holding my head in place. I remember getting a good look at his hand and eyes. They had long fingers with pads at the tips, sort of like salamanders, and they don't have fingernails. Their skin is gray, but kind of like a powdery translucent gray. They had large heads with small necks, so small and thin it didn't make sense. Their arms and fingers were long and skinny too. I was in the chair with my head and jaw held by something so I didn't see their feet. I'd say the tallest probably stood about the height of my lowest rib, and for reference, I'm 5'10". The tube machine sucked out the food I ate earlier that day, and then was pulled out of me. I don't remember how I got there, but then I remembered being in a cage made of some kind of metal that reminded me of aluminum. In a room with curved walls. In front of me was a man who looked a lot like a human, talking to a gray person on a window that lit up a screen like a hologram. The man was tall and looked like a human, except that his skin was very white and his hair was blonde and platinum. He spoke with a gray person on the holo screen in a language I didn't understand. He wore a blue flight uniform of some kind. This man was obviously military of some sort, judging by his uniform. The gray person spoke in a language that sounded like birds chirping. Once the call was over, the holo screen turned into a different display with symbols, and the man turned and walked to me. He crouched down and spoke to me in plain English and said to me, "Everything's gonna be fine. I'm going to get you out of here and take you home." I was so happy to hear that. He opened the cage, and next thing I know, I fell on top of my bed with my back hitting the mattress first. I immediately got out of bed right after I fell. Was this a real alien abduction or simply a horrible nightmare? Typically, I would think it was merely a bad dream, but the user describes extreme pain in his throat for days afterwards from the tube being forced into him. What was the source of this pain if it was simply a dream? Truly a strange encounter to contemplate. Number 1. The Alien and the Bassinet. Our final story is another from phantomsandmonsters.com about a woman who was asleep in bed next to her baby's bassinet before waking up and seeing something that would make any mother panic. The following is an excerpt from her account. "I turned over on my side, facing the bassinet, and noticed a bright light coming in between the window blinds. I thought out loud, is it morning already? The light was coming in between the blinds and it was so bright, but the rest of the room was dark. There was also a bright light on the wall next to the window, and I looked up to see where the light was coming from. To my horror, just above the bassinet was an alien's gray face. It was just the head, no upper body, legs, or arms. The head was dark in color, very round, ending in a pointed chin, and there was a small slit for a mouth. The nostrils were small, but the eyes were large and almond-shaped and very shiny black. It had some sort of glass lamp on the top of its head. The light on the wall was projected from the lamp. Then I noticed that the being was looking down at my baby daughter. Oh my god, I couldn't speak. My heart started pounding so hard that I started trembling uncontrollably. It saw me and realized I was looking at it. The being moved towards me and I started screaming and swinging my arms. I remember that I screamed out loud for it to leave. It floated from its original position above the bassinet to just above my face. I remember seeing this light blue fog build up in front of my face, and then in a dreamlike manner, I heard a cooing sound similar to mourning doves. I had the feeling that whoever was talking to me was stern and was telling me that it was for our own good. The woman then describes waking up with a sore spot on her head and the alien being gone without a trace. She insists it was not a dream and that she really saw an alien creature that she believes will one day return. For her sake, let us hope it was simply a dream.
Number 5. Space Camp. Starting this list off, we arrive at the Apollo 8 mission. Well, 7 other missions before it, but it was a little rocky back then, you know? The early days. But Apollo 8 was the first fully crewed spacecraft to leave low Earth orbit and the first human spaceflight to reach the moon. Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and Bill Anders, aka the crew, orbited the moon 10 times without landing. December 21st, 1968. The Apollo 8 astronauts returned to Earth on December 27th, 1968. Now, here's the scary part. Apparently, while they were up there, they claimed to have seen some pretty strange stuff. Some weird lights, glowing moving balls, and apparently bonfires all over the moon. What? Yeah, apparently the men said it looked like smoke and small bonfires when visiting the far side of the moon. When the capsule passed behind the moon for 45 minutes, the crew claimed to have seen multiple lights coming from the surface. And thankfully, NASA even transcribed what they heard. Borman says, bonfires. Anders says campfires. All in all, we have astronauts puzzled at what they're seeing. 7 months later, Apollo 11 is performing a mission orbiting the moon and captures apparently a bunch of things that are out of the ordinary. Buzz and Collins both claim to have seen things like lava flowing, aliens parked on craters, to even small bonfires and flickers on the surface. Of course, there's no oxygen on the moon, so what could have caused the fire and the smoke? Number 4, air buds. As always, dudes, if you dig what we do here on Top 5 Scary, hit that thumbs up button or leave a comment down below. It really helps us out. What's the biggest NASA secret you know of? Let me know down below. I'll check it out. When we think about astronauts that have spent their fair share up in space, we can't forget the experiments in the early stages of both the Soviets and the American space programs. It truly was a race, pushing the limits faster and faster, bigger and bolder kind of stuff, and with that omelet comes a couple broken eggs. We often forget that NASA has sent its fair share of animals up there as well, and of course, unfortunately, not many of them have returned back to us. Yeah, very sad. Science is one of those things where its benefits are tremendous, but the hypothesis part sometimes are a little dark and grim. We remember Laika, the space dog, and her 103-minute cosmic journey aboard Sputnik 2, but let's not forget the infamous Able and Baker. This was the American version of Laika, only a year later too. 1959, the United States launched one female rhesus monkey named Able and one female squirrel monkey named Baker into space. This mission lasted only 15 minutes and they both safely returned back home. Their predecessors, not so lucky. See, a couple of animals have yet to return from their space mission. Mice, geckos, dogs. It was a different time. To announce their successful flight, NASA unveiled Able and Baker to journalists in the same room where just a month prior they had introduced the Mercury 7 crew as the country's first human astronauts. Big jumps, right? Sadly, after the training and missions, both animals passed. But you can visit them at the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum where they're both on display. A little dark and grim, but we pay homage. Number 3. Valkyrie. NASA has been experimenting with a little bit more tech in the last 20 years. A little bit more robotics instead of fitting humans into a capsule. Seems like this next project has been in the works for some years, but under silent lock and key until recent years. Valkyrie is the name of the NASA's new semi-secretive AI project. Taken from Norse mythology, Valkyrie is designed to be a robust, rugged, and entirely electric humanoid robot capable of operating in degraded or damaged human-engineered environments. The NASA R5, aka Valkyrie, is the size of a full human adult with a 7-digit price tag, putting it a little bit more expensive than the very terrestrial Tesla bot. This robot was originally built for the 2013 DARPA Robotics Challenge. The 6-foot, 300-pound piece of machinery represents the future of space exploration. It's the first step towards a goal of human colonization on Mars and other planets in our solar system. Dude, this is nuts! High hopes for the robot. However, currently tethered to the ceiling of a warehouse in Lowell, Massachusetts. Oh. The Lowell model is one of 4 units produced by NASA. The space agency held on to one robot for its own purposes and awarded 2 to the research of Northwestern and MIT, while a 4th lives in Scotland's University of Edinburgh. The 4 models are being tinkered and tailored on as we speak. Long story short, we've reached a peak in space travel where maybe living things don't have to make it or break it anymore. To reduce hazards and prevent any more life being lost or altered for science, the Valkyrie is an option for NASA to search very hazardous environments while keeping a pretty safe distance while doing so. Number 2. Ice cold. We all know about Jupiter's moon Europa. I was like 18 when I found out about all the planets' moons in our solar system. Yeah. Did you know that Jupiter has 79 moons? Like 79. Yeah, we have 1. Like, we know nothing, Jon Snow. Well, maybe we know something, because apparently we found traces of water on a couple different rocks now. Europa, the 6th largest moon in our solar system. It was discovered in 1610, and ever since then, we've kind of wondered what's on it. In 1979, the 2 Voyager spacecrafts passed through the Jovian system, providing the first hints that Europa may contain liquid water. The ground-based telescopes on Earth, along with the Galileo spacecraft and telescopes, have increased scientists' confidence for a European ocean. Yeah, cue NASA's Sesame program. Scientific exploration subsurface access mechanism for Europa. Sesame will not drill, however, but actually thaw its way under the icy ocean, and from there will operate small probes to conduct an array of research on biology, sediment, gases, and of course what we're all hoping for, humanoid mermaid-looking aliens. However, the part that really has NASA's attention is all of the tectonic activity beneath said icy shelf, meaning that somewhere in the middle, there's warm water flowing under with currents. Yeah, creepy. In 2011, NASA awarded Stone Aerospace $4 million to fund Phase 2 of Project Sesame. Phase 2 of the project consisted of testing the cryobot in Alaska in 2015. Phase 3 of the project will use a swarm of tiny robots the size of cell phones to whisk through the water beneath the thick icy shelf of Jupiter's moon looking for evidence of alien life. The tiny robots would be released underwater, swimming far from their mothership to explore a new world. Basically, the cryobot melts its way through the subglacial lake, collects samples, resurfaces, and comes back home. Yeah, seems like an alien movie plot just ready for scripting, huh? And number 1, Artemis I. So we haven't been back to the moon since 1972, but why? Well folks, we're going back. And soon, like 2 weeks soon. Yeah, I didn't know either, as I'm a millennial who doesn't watch the news on TV. We're going back to the moon, people, but not the Apollo program anymore. No, we've changed the name to another Greek name. They're twin, Artemis. Apparently, Artemis I will be the first in a series of increasingly complex missions to build a long-term human presence on the moon for decades to come. Oh yeah, we're staying. Like, building forts and stuff. The primary goals for Artemis I are to demonstrate Orion's systems in a spaceflight environment and to ensure a safe re-entry, descent, splashdown, and recovery. Basically like the full shebang. Yeah, not taking any more risks, huh NASA? Safety first kind of deal. I like it. Not a long mission too. September 27th they're supposed to launch and splash back down here in November. Like 38 days long. Nice little quick one. And then reevaluate and select the people. Yeah, dude, this is sick. I'm down with phase 2 space stuff, you know? Like, let's get that robot up there. Number 5, the Great Attractor. The Great Attractor is a gravitational anomaly in space and the apparent central gravitational point of the Laniakea supercluster. The observed anomaly suggests a localized concentration of mass, millions of times more massive than the Milky Way. That's a lot of M's. It is inconveniently blurred by our own Milky Way galaxy view, lying just behind the zone of avoidance. Basically, we know it's there, but we can't really see it. Yet, in visible light wavelengths, the Great Attractor is difficult to observe. In fact, it will not be visible for another 100 million years until Earth will be on the other side of the Milky Way galaxy, allowing us to see past the galactic plane of matter. It's terrifying. It's not a black hole, but acts like one. Okay. With its discovery in the late 70s, the Milky Way actually moves through space after a series of velocity tests. Astrophysicists found that the Milky Way was moving towards the constellation of Centaurus at about 600 kilometers per second. Yeah. The discovery of cosmic microwave background dipoles were used to reflect the motion towards the Great Attractor, allowing us to initialize there is something really there. When first discovered, we had no way to see through the zone of avoidance, but while that region blocks much of the visible light beyond, the gas and dust anomalies block infrared and X-ray light as much as they can. As X-ray astronomy became more powerful, we could start to see objects around that part of the sky. And what they found was a large supercluster of galaxies in the area of the Great Attractor known as the Norma Cluster, a mass of about 1,000 trillions of our suns. That's thousands of galaxies in the same place. When we look at an even larger region of galaxies, we find that the local galaxies in the Great Attractor are moving towards something even larger, known as the Shapley Supercluster. It contains more than 8,000 galaxies and has a mass of more than 10 million billion suns. That sounds made up. The Shapley Supercluster is in fact the most massive galaxy cluster within a billion light years of us, and we and every galaxy in our corner of the universe are moving slowly towards it. Dude, I gotta sleep tonight, really? Number 4, black holes. Black holes, yeah, these are significantly less scary all of a sudden. Or are they? These regions in space where gravity is so strong that nothing can escape has been quite the hot topic these days. Half of the 2020 Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded to Roger Penrose for his mathematical work showing that black holes are an inescapable consequence of Einstein's theory of gravity. And of course, Andrea Ghez and Reinhard Genzel shared the other half for proving that a massive black hole sits in the center of our galaxy. Alright, I was almost not anxious for a second there. Black holes are terrifying for a couple reasons. If you fell into a black hole left over when a star died, you would be spaghetti. Yeah. Also, black holes are places where the laws of physics no longer exist. Reading this just reminds me we still know nothing, and we have iPhones. The first black hole confirmed was Cygnus X1, the brightest X-ray source in the Cygnus constellation. Since then, about 50 other black holes have been discovered in the systems. There are apparently 10 million that are expected to be scattered throughout the Milky Way galaxy alone. Last year, astronomers published the first ever picture of a black hole and its event horizon. A 7 billion solar mass Leviathan lays still in the M87 galaxy. It's over 1,000 times bigger than the black hole in our galaxy. These black holes are dark most of the time, but when their gravity pulls in nearby stars and gas, they pump out huge amounts of radiation. If you get too close to one of them, the enormous gravity will suck you in and time will seem to have stopped completely for you, just getting spaghettied for eternity. Yeah, that's horrifying. Number 3, the cosmic microwave background. The CMB, or famously known as simply the cold spot, is a region of the sky seen in microwaves that has been found to be unusually large and cold relative to the expected properties of the cosmic background radiation. The cold spot is approximately much colder than the average CMB temperature, and many theoretical explanations exist, including a so-called supervoid or great void that may exist outside of our galaxy. Such a void would be one of the largest structures in the observable universe. This would be an extremely large region of the universe containing a density of matter much smaller than the average density activity in space. A 2015 study shows a supervoid that has a radius of 1.8 billion light years across and is 3 billion light years away from our galaxy in the direction of the cold spot is likely associated with it. Although large voids are already known in the universe, a void would have to be exceptionally vast to explain being so cold. So it's dark, it's cold, and it's huge, and we have no idea what it is. Theories suggest it could be another universe beyond our own, caused by quantum entanglement. The problem with these theories is by standard cosmology, such a giant cosmic hole shouldn't exist. If the cold spot is in fact another universe merging with ours, then this provides the first evidence for a parallel universe. Could this be the long-lost dark energy astrophysicists talk about? Who knows, dude? Number 2, altered carbon. Preliminary results from NASA's twins study reveal that 7% of astronaut Scott Kelly's genetic expression, DNA, and genes did not return to baseline after his return to home to Earth 2 years ago. I'm sorry, what? The study looks at what happened to astronaut Kelly before, during, and after he spent exactly 1 year aboard the International Space Station through an extensive comparison with his identical twin, Mark Kelly, who remained on Earth. Kelly's newly genetic expression had in fact changed. But who was he now? Well, good news, he and Mark are still identical twins. Changes in gene expression are how the human body reacts to the environment around it. Kelly's transformation suggests long-term alterations related to at least 5 biological pathways and functions. Something's different. The preliminary results from this study on Kelly, now retired from NASA, were released in 2018's workshop for NASA's human research. NASA published its first results, and the findings are a little nerve-wracking. To track physical changes caused by time and space, scientists measured Kelly's metabolites, cytokines, and proteins before, during, and after this mission. They learned that spaceflight is associated with oxygen deprivation stress, increased inflammation, and dramatic nutrient shifts that permanently affect gene expression and their makeup. The team focused on primarily chemical changes in RNA and DNA. 93% of Kelly's genetic expression stayed the same after re-entering our atmosphere. However, once he returned to Earth, several genes remained a little altered. Some of these, of course, are thought to be caused by the stresses of space travel itself, which is totally normal. Some, however, still have scientists scratching their heads. That's terrifying. And coming at the number 1 spot, Oumuamua. Oumuamua is the first interstellar object detected passing through the solar system. Formerly named 1-2017 U1, famously named Oumuamua, coming from the Hawaiian word scout, or roughly first distance traveler. As seen from the telescope at Haleakala Observatory in 2017 in Hawaii, discovered by Robert Wyrick using the Pan-STARRS telescope, it was about 33 million kilometers from Earth and heading away from the sun. And this is where it gets a little scary. The small object, only about a rugby field across and 10 rugby fields long, exhibited non-gravitational acceleration, turning away from the sun, potentially due to outgassing or a push from solar radiation. This thing came in fast, shot by us towards the sun, slowed down, and then changed its course. This so-called tumbling, shiny red anomaly moving fast through space is likely of an extrasolar origin. Yeah, that means it came from somewhere else. Came from another solar system. Oumuamua's path cannot be captured into a solar orbit, so it would eventually have to leave our solar system and continue into interstellar space at some point, leaving us with millions of questions. But we were too late to catch it. Its whereabouts are now completely unknown. By 2019, some astronomers concluded that Oumuamua is most likely a natural object like comet or a rock. Of course, a small number of astronomers suggested that Oumuamua is a product of alien technology, and in January 2022, researchers introduced Project Lyra, which proposed that a spacecraft could be launched from Earth and might actually catch up to Oumuamua in 26 years for close-up studies. Being the first known object of its type, people have a lot of questions. Originally classified as a comet, then classified as an asteroid. Either case, we have an interstellar object, people, that seems to move, speed up, and turn on its own. So what's moving this thing? Radiation pressure, solar winds, or possibly an energy source made from some of our highly intelligent neighbors? Either or, this thing is absolutely terrifying, and if you're not familiar with the work of Professor Avi Loeb of Harvard, who is the leading expert on this anomaly, I highly recommend you check him out.
Number 5, the wow signal. We want so badly for aliens to talk to us. We want that more than anything. We've been looking for any sign, no matter how small, that there's intelligent life out there just waiting to come find us. And we will take just about anything at this point. A text, an emoji, maybe just a wow.
Wow.
Well, we might have already had that. See if you get wowed by the story of the WOW signal. And can we throw just one Owen Wilson wow in here? Just for me, just for me. Wow. In 1977, a radio telescope in Ohio picked up a mysterious signal that lasted for 72 seconds. This signal was so strong and unusual that the astronomer who was watching it wrote "wow" on the printout. No, the aliens didn't send "wow," but that would have been way better. This became known as the WOW signal, and it remains one of the most interesting pieces of evidence out there in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Now, this signal was detected by the Big Ear radio telescope, which was up there in space looking for radio signals as part of the SETI program. We've talked about that before on the channel. It stands for Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. The signal was very strong and appeared to be coming from a point in the sky near the constellation Sagittarius. I'm an Aquarius personally. The frequency of the signal was consistent with what would be expected from hydrogen atoms that had been accelerated to high speeds. See, I don't know what that means. Despite numerous attempts to detect the signal again, it's never been observed since. This has led to much speculation about its origin and nature. Now, some scientists have suggested that the signal could be proof of extraterrestrial intelligence, some small sign, while there are others, Scullies of the world who might be doubting a little bit. Others have proposed more mundane explanations such as a natural phenomenon or a human-made satellite, but I think we would all deeply prefer it would be aliens. No? It would be a much more interesting end to the story. The WOW signal remains one of the greatest mysteries in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. It raises so many questions about the nature of our universe and our place in it. Will we ever solve the mystery of the WOW signal? Could it really just have been Owen Wilson and we're radiating back that energy? We may never know. But if you're looking for way more mysteries about space, well, Top 5 Scary is the place to be. We've got more videos on space mysteries than there are stars in the sky. And if space mysteries aren't your jam, we got cryptids, conspiracies, true crime, just about anything freaky you can think up, we've done a video on it. So hit subscribe, hit that little bell as well if you're feeling so frisky, and make sure you don't miss a single scream. But, hey, do that at the end of this video for me, okay? We got way more space mysteries coming up for you right now. Number 4, the Great Attractor. The Great Attractor. I wish that's what they called me. That is not what they called me in high school, though. Do you ever feel like you're being pushed through life, pulled towards a certain path you might not necessarily want? Well, talk to your parents and sort out your life path, but you could be feeling that way because the way our galaxy is being pulled towards something called the Great Attractor, which sounds a lot more ominous than it should, I think. That sounds kind of heavy, so let's get into this. What is pulling our galaxy and many others at faster speeds than you'd think? The Great Attractor is a mysterious gravitational anomaly located in the direction of the Centaurus constellation. It's exerting a gravitational force on our galaxy, where we live, where all our stuff is, and many other galaxies, and its exact nature and location remain uncomfortably unknown. The existence of this thing was first brought up in the 70s, when astronomers noticed that galaxies in our sort of galaxy neighborhood appeared to be moving in a direction that could not be explained by the gravity of nearby objects. Instead, they were being pulled towards a point in the sky in the direction of the Centaurus constellation. Pretty weird. Now, the Great Attractor is thought to be a massive cluster of galaxies, a big galaxy suburb, if you will. But its exact location and composition remain currently unknown. It's obscured by the Milky Way's dust and gas, making it kind of hard to get a good look at it and study. Astronomers have tried their hardest, trying to map the distribution of galaxies, trying to determine its location and structure, but like I said, it's pretty difficult and not too much progress has been made. One of the more unsettling aspects of the Great Attractor I find is that it's located in a region of space known as the zone of avoidance. This is an area of the sky that's difficult to observe due to all that dust and gas like I mentioned before, and it's also what my therapist used to call my bedroom. Number 3, the Black Knight Satellite. The Black Knight Satellite sounds like it's something out of the latest Marvel movie where I think all the heroes and villains will fly up to have their big CGI smash them up, but it's actually the name of a mysterious object that is purported to be orbiting the planet and is host to some very colorful and fun conspiracy theories that we're going to dive into. The Black Knight Satellite conspiracy is a very intriguing and mysterious one related to what we got going on up there. It started back in 1954 when newspapers around the world reported that 2 US Air Force pilots spotted a mysterious object in orbit around Earth. If you follow those reports, the object was about 13,000 years old and appeared to be transmitting radio signals. Now since then, there have been numerous alleged sightings and claims of radio signals received from the Black Knight satellite. Some conspiracy theorists believe the object is an ancient alien spacecraft sent to observe and monitor Earth from up high. Others believe it is some secret government satellite, or the really wild ones is that it's a remnant of a lost ancient civilization, the Anunnaki or something if you want to throw your hat into that conspiracy ring. There are, of course, many people who dismiss all of this as just misinterpretations of natural phenomena, which again, extremely possible whenever we're describing anything weird happening in space, but it is very fun to imagine and to play pretend, so we'll keep talking like that. The Black Knight satellite is capturing the imaginations of people who believe in it, and I think that's fun to talk about. There are some wild conspiracists who even say that the US and other governments have a big, secret cover-up about what really is going on there, if it's actually aliens watching from up high or a secret government surveillance project, who knows? Now, one of the more interesting pieces of evidence for the satellite is a series of photographs taken by NASA during the STS-88 mission in 1998. These photographs appear to show a large metallic object orbiting around the Earth, but no surprise, NASA has dismissed these claims, saying the object is nothing more than debris or a reflection from the shuttle's windows. So despite there not really being much evidence, the Black Knight satellite will continue to fascinate us and intrigue us. Number 2, the dark side of the moon. Also known as the far side of the moon, and one of the better Pink Floyd albums, and if you haven't set it up to Wizard of Oz, oh, you just gotta. The dark side of the moon has been a source of fascination and mystery for space enthusiasts and the plot line of one of the worst Transformers movies. One of the worst Transformers movies, as if there's a good one. It's the side of the moon that is never visible from Earth, and as a result, we know very little about it. This lack of knowledge has given rise to all sorts of fun and crazy conspiracy theories, ranging from kind of plausible to totally nuts. One of the more popular ones is that there are alien structures or bases on the dark side of the moon. Maybe some cool relics, like something out of 2001. Some conspiracy theorists believe that NASA and other space agencies have been covering up evidence of all these things, pulling the wool over our eyes. Again, this is literally the plot of the third Transformers movies, where there was Decepticons on the moon. It's around when they started getting really crazy. Conspiracists point to anomalies in photographs taken by missions to the moon, such as the Apollo missions, the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, as evidence of these secret alien going-ons on the dark side of the moon. Another theory, and an insane one, is that the moon holds ancient artifacts or evidence of a long-lost civilization. Some people believe that these artifacts could hold the key to unlocking the secrets of the universe, or even provide evidence of alien life. Now, if we really want to get out there, some conspiracy theorists believe that there are dark forces or malevolent entities lurking on the dark side of the moon. We're talking ethereal shadow creatures, old gods that would have kept H.P. Lovecraft up at night. And these things could be responsible for all the unexplained phenomena or UFO sightings or mysterious goings-ons in space that we can't explain. It's all old tentacle gods up on the dark side of the moon. Or it could be perfectly explainable. Explainable? Or it could be perfectly explainable. One of the two. They don't hire me for my intellects, tell you that much. They don't hire me for my brain. They hire me because I say words into a camera. And I don't even do that right sometimes. Number 1, space snakes. I've talked about Story Musgrave a few times on this channel, and I'll probably do it again. Namely because his name is Story Musgrave. That is a wild name for an astronaut to have. That's like a Star Wars guy name. Maybe it's fitting then that this man so vehemently claims that he's run into aliens before. Story is, if you'll pardon this pun, a very storied individual who's been to space multiple times and is now an Imagineer at Disney. So I feel like if aliens were going to appear to anyone as an envoy, it would be an astronaut with ties to the most powerful corporation on Earth. Musgrave is a well-respected astronaut. He's been to space 6 times and he spent 1,200 hours in space, so he might know a thing or two. So when he says he's seeing aliens, we prick our ears up a little bit. According to Musgrave, he saw space snakes that were long black objects that looked like they were swimming around in space. He described them as being about 3 to 4 feet with a metallic sort of biomechanical appearance. Think like H.R. Giger's Alien. And he said he saw these things multiple times. NASA has not really commented on this. They didn't put out a press beacon where they said yay aliens or nay aliens. They just kind of ignored it altogether. Now some experts suggest that space snakes. Could have been debris or ice particles that were reflecting light, while others, and I think this is kind of fun, suggested that it could have just been a hallucination caused by the effects of spaceflight on the human brain. I feel like that particular brand of skepticism is not one you ever hear much when decrying UFO or alien sightings. We never just say, oh, he was probably hallucinating. Me, personally, I don't know. I'm inclined to trust a guy named Story Musgrave. I trust a man who's up in space so many times. It's intriguing, but it is unverified. He says he's seen them multiple times, which I think is kind of interesting. Is there a higher entity trying to contact him? We may never know, but if we do, Top 5 Scary will be the first one to tell you. I promise you that.
Number 5. Japan sighting. Our first sighting comes to us from Japan, where a man looked out his window one day in time to see an amazing sight, only for it to disappear before he could get his family to look at it. The following is his story as he related it. My name is Tatsumi Tanaka. I am 42 years old and the owner of a beauty parlor in Inaka City, Gunma Prefecture. Last Sunday, I saw a UFO, and it was the first time such a shocking matter happened to me. I never believed that I would have such an experience, but surprisingly, it happened to me. I was on the second floor of my house and casually looking out the east window when I caught sight of a white object, rather big, the shape impossible to describe, rising softly and perpendicularly from the surface of the ground. We see Mount Akagi in the northeast direction, and it was in this direction that the UFO rose, but I could not tell how far away it was. It was about 10 o'clock in the morning. I wondered what it was. I thought at first sight it must be an airship or a balloon. I strained my eyes to see better, but could not understand what it was. After rising straight up, it stayed for a while at a constant height and seemed to become blurred outside. It then turned into the oval shape that is familiar to us from TV or magazines. It was the same object, but not the same shape as before, but the outline was not clear. Soon after, it moved to the right at fast speed. It looked like a low-altitude flight, but it all happened so quickly, and then it just disappeared into the cloudless blue sky. I was so shocked, I fell out of my mind. This thing was so huge, but it disappeared just in a moment. I tried to explain what I saw to my wife and child who were right beside me, but I couldn't. I just pointed and could only shout out in surprise. My wife was very annoyed and said that everyone cannot see UFOs, only some people do and some don't. By then it had disappeared. I was so excited that I went outside with my daughter and searched the sky. But it was too late. I still can't believe I have had such an experience. I will never forget that movement and that speed. Something beyond common sense. It means to me that things exist that we don't understand. Number 4. New Zealand. Next, we have a story from New Zealand where a woman was enjoying a nice day in her yard when she saw a craft unlike anything she'd seen before. This is her story in her own words. My name is Edith Perkins. At 8:30 p.m. Monday, I was doing some chores in our backyard. This is in Bexley, just north of Christchurch, South Island, New Zealand. I saw something in the sky, like a capsule or cigar-shaped object. At first, it had a silver whitish body with a darker gray forked tail. While I looked at it, it was just overhead, seeming to be coming closer. I was facing west. The rounded edges, front and back of the object, called my attention to it initially. Its size appeared to be 10 centimeters long, if held at arm's length. I suppose it was about 30,000 feet high, but it seemed very puzzling that there was no jet trail behind it. So, I went indoors to fetch a pair of 7x35 binoculars. My husband joined me and our home care nurse. As we three watched, a very bright light completely covered the object. It did not happen as a flash of light. It seemed to start up and then finish with a burst of light. I was seeing a different rear design on the craft with a forked end to it, and the color was now dark gray. Another burst of light occurred, and the object presented a rim all around the craft, with either intermittent colored lights on the rim, or else the rim was composed of rotating colored lights. These were in tones of reddish orange. This object then flew out over Pegasus Bay towards the northeast. Number 3. Papua New Guinea. Our story from Papua New Guinea involves a young man whose entire community was brought to a chilled hush when a strange craft came to town for a closer look at humanity. As he put it, my name is Alex James. I live in Pilla Pilla Community, New Guinea. About 7 p.m. last Tuesday, I went with 4 friends to Pilla Pilla Community School for rugby practice. We were going back to our village after dark when we saw some bright lights approaching. There were a lot of people about, some coming back from bathing, and others sitting around eating their dinners. When they saw the light, they all ran inside and locked their doors, except for a few of us who just stood and stared. As the UFO approached us, we heard no sound. The streetlights all dimmed just like a torch when the batteries are failing. It hovered over the coconut palms and looked huge. It was oblong in shape. It passed slowly overhead. My friends and I were almost frozen as we watched it. We felt as though we could not move or speak, because we were so shocked by the sight. The bottom of the UFO was oblong shaped, with very bright lights all around the edges. At the top was a pyramid-like shape, with lights around it also. Just bright white. No colors. It was huge and took over 30 minutes to pass by. We checked the time. When it was hovering over us, it seemed to be as bright as day. The whole place was lit up like bright daylight. That's how bright its lights were. Then the object just disappeared in the direction of the mountains near Vuvu. Number 2. Zimbabwe sighting. Our next tale comes to us from a journalist named Cynthia Hind, who interviewed a teenager named Lloyd, who witnessed not only a strange craft, but alien life forms when he was awoken late one night. The following is quoted directly from her report. At between 1 and 1:30, he woke up, and because he knew it would be quiet at that hour, he decided to do some studying for his exams. Whilst thus engaged, he heard a clicking sound. It continued for some minutes, so Lloyd decided to check what it could be. He opened the front door and looked outside. He could hear the sound coming from up the road, and when he glanced in that direction, he witnessed something very strange. He quickly went outside and hid behind a hedge to get a better view. He was able to observe a small figure about a meter high, with a head like a rugby ball, dressed in white overalls. On its back, the creature had a small satchel, attached to which was an aerial with a flashing red light. Lloyd was terrified. He told me he was asphyxiated with fear and ran back into the house, jumped into bed, and covered himself with his blankets. He slept fitfully for the rest of the night. At 6 the next morning, he went to look where the creature had walked and found several footprints which he could not identify and which he attributed to the creature. When he arrived at school, he told his friends about seeing a ghost in the night, but one of his friends suggested that it was a UFO. Lloyd is now under the impression that the creature is called a UFO. Number 1. Australia sighting. Our final tale of the day comes from a man by the name of Patrick Knowles. He was on a road trip with his family when they discovered a close encounter more terrifying than he could have possibly imagined. In his own words, it happened on January 20th. My mother, 2 brothers, and I were driving from Perth to Melbourne. We were going to drive straight through in shifts, and we planned to cross the desert at night when the heat wasn't so bad. By 2:30 a.m., we were in the Nullarbor Plain. We stopped for petrol and switched drivers. Sean was driving, and I was in the front seat next to him. The road was empty. Suddenly, we saw a bright yellow light up ahead, and Sean slowed down. As we got closer, the yellow light seemed to be emanating from an egg-shaped object hovering just above ground level. We thought we might be seeing things, but then a caravan passed, going the other way, and it swerved sharply to avoid the luminous egg. The closer we got to it, the more we realized it wasn't a normal vehicle, or a road signal, or anything like that. Sean swerved to avoid it, and we continued on, leaving it behind. Suddenly, the object started towards us. It appeared to accelerate with tremendous speed. We drove on, and it literally chased us. The faster we went to get away from it, the faster this object went after us. I reckon we reached a speed of 125 miles per hour, but it caught up in a matter of seconds. Then Sean made a sudden U-turn and headed back west in the direction of the petrol station. The UFO also turned around. I don't know how the hell it was flying, because it didn't have any wings or anything like wings. It just kept coming after us. Sean made another fast U-turn, heading back towards Melbourne again, but the UFO turned as well and kept pace with the car. In the back seat, everyone was scared. The dogs started barking and whining. Then, suddenly, we were hit. It shot a beam of light out and punctured our back tire. The back tire was on fire. We started sliding across the road. I realized if we braked, we would have to confront the UFO, but Sean didn't have any choice. Then it landed on the roof of the car and picked the car up. It lit up the car like a microwave. The heat was intense. Our hair was standing straight up, and we felt really funny, like we were being dehydrated. It was awful. Frightening. Like our brains were being sucked out. My fear was that I would be pulled out of my body. I put my hand out of the window and touched something spongy that burned my hand. I thought we were going to die. You could actually feel the car rising in the air. The car began to fill with a thick black fog. It was so hot, and all this soot, this junk started covering us. Our voices started changing. You know how a tape deck sounds when the batteries start to go flat. That's what it was like. Then I passed out. I came to when I heard a tremendous noise like a bang, and our car suddenly dropped back to Earth. Dawn was coming up. The thing just flew away, and that was the last we saw of it. I had to change the tire, and we tried to clean out the black soot. There were marks on the roof of the car. As soon as we could, we drove fast to the nearest roadhouse. We were too shocked to talk for a while. Then we realized we had lost a couple hours' time during the incident. We called the police. The funny thing was, they were already looking for us. Someone, maybe the people in the caravan we passed, had phoned the police anonymously. Their report states that they witnessed our car being picked up off the road and shaken violently. They noticed the car was covered in black ash. The police inspected our car and noted the ash, the bad smell, and the dents on the roof. They were convinced something had occurred. They took us to the hospital, where we were treated for burns and shock.
Number 5. Let's start off with a bang and get a good one for you right off the bat. I like to save these ones for last, but with this compilation, pretty much all of the sightings I've found for you today are winners. This clip is short and sweet, so let's play as much of it as we can. Posted to Twitter from the account UFO Twitter. From what we can make out, we see something barreling through the skies at top speeds, looking faster than just about anything any human tech could put out. It's got a bit of like a football shape to it almost, and I'll shout out my favorite comment on the video underneath, which says, "Looks like Uncle Rico finally threw that football over the mountain." Little Napoleon Dynamite throwback for you. Whatever it is definitely looks weird. You know, it looks to me more like it's possibly some hyper-advanced spy craft or military drone than it could be any weather balloon. Having watched it roughly 30 million times over, pausing every frame like I'm a CSI investigator and I'm pressing my nose right up against the monitor, I noticed that there's a white curved surface on the black shell of the craft, almost looking like it could be a dome for a pilot. I can't make it anything on the inside, of course, but it does give off the impression that the craft is manned, or aliened. I don't know what the correct verbiage is here. Something else I noticed in my freeze frame play-by-play of the video is that it almost looks as if the craft has some sort of writing on the back of it. You know, if it was just CGI, I doubt that someone would go to that length just to fool some folks on Twitter, but hey, never doubt the power of boredom and access to video editing software. So, folks back at home, what do we think about this one? Spy plane, some new advanced military technology, your run-of-the-mill balloon, or just some very, very convincing computer handiwork? And if you're looking for more UFO clips to squint at, well, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some. Just in this one series of videos alone, I've collected 20 clips of UFOs all from this year that you should check out. And again, that's just this series alone. If this is your first time coming on in, welcome. You'll see we've got videos on cursed objects, ghosts, paranormal activities, cryptids, and honestly a whole lot more. Just about everything scary under the sun. There's a world of scares out there, so subscribe, stay scared, but check that out after this video, okay? We worked really hard on this one. Number 4, Bondi Beach. Our next video comes to us from the land down under, so you might need to flip your phone or your monitor, or your tablet or whatever upside down to get a good look at the UFO. Maybe that'll help. See if that gets it there for you. Caught on Bondi Beach by TikTok user DJ Just, we've got a pretty clear view of something strange flying across the beautiful blue Australian sky. Now in this clip we can see something shiny, round, and reflective making its way up there, tailed behind by a black helicopter. Looks to be kind of small, maybe the size big enough for one person or maybe 3 or 4 little green men depending on how compact they are. I want to know if that helicopter is a coincidence or if it's responding to this UAP, you know, coming in to recover it, make contact. Now commenters on the video suggested that it could very well be a weather balloon passing through, and it's definitely likely. That's what it turns out to be like 99.9% of all UFO sightings. But if it was a weather balloon, you know, surely it would have been shot down during that little welcoming party where we were shooting down weather balloons all over the globe, right? Kidding. Another commenter suggested kind of reasonably that it could be a plane because there is a military base fairly close by to Bondi Beach, which would make some sense. Might even explain that helicopter coming in near the end there. Unfortunately, this clip is a little more zoomed out than some of the other ones on here, so it's not the easiest to say what's going on here, but I kind of feel like that's half the fun with UFO clips, isn't it? You know, trying to figure out what's going on. It's like a little guessing game. Let's hear what you all think down there. Is this aliens trying to touch down in Sydney? Or just something perfectly reasonable? I know which one I would infinitely prefer it to be. It's the aliens, in case you were wondering. It's aliens. Number 3, Canada. I had to include this next clip. I just had to. Yes, it's a very cool clip, but mostly it was taken from my hometown. Mississauga, baby! No one famous has ever come from there, so there might be a halfway decent chance I could be Mississauga's biggest star as I spend my days endlessly watching the stars. Enough talk about the Greater Toronto Area's greatest borough. Let's take a look at some more UAP clips. Coming in next is a clip posted to Reddit, simply titled, "Weird Object Seen Flying Over Mississauga," and it is hard to disagree. Why don't you take a little look-see for me? I mean, look at it. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to say that just looking at it won't tell you. What on earth is going on here? What I love about this clip is that this one doesn't even remotely look like anything else I've seen in a minute. This doesn't look like a weather balloon or a flying saucer. I don't even know where you'd start describing this one, really. This one looks like it's a UFO Rorschach test, I think. You take a look at it and reveal some element of your personality. I kind of see a little spaceman, like a little Among Us guy, hovering around on a jetpack. The way it moves really gets me too. It seems erratic and alive, less like it's being controlled and more like something's fighting the controls here. Now, I always like to listen to both sides of every story when it comes to UFO sighting content, and one user in the comments here suggested that he was pretty certain that this was just a Mr. Peanut balloon being let loose, and I have to admit I kind of see it. I don't know if you want to throw up a photo of Mr. Peanut here. I just think it's absolutely hilarious if this UFO sighting is really just a sighting of a giant floating lagoon. I'll leave it to my commenters to decide. You're my best and brightest. How are we feeling on this clip? Is this something weird in the sky? Proof of travelers from beyond the stars experimenting with some new technology that we couldn't possibly understand? Bigger than any of us? Bigger than this galaxy? Or is this just a bit of advertising for a salty snack from the Planters Corporation? Either truth is horrifying. Number 2, best UFO clip. Our next video was posted to TikTok by the user UFO Tracker. Good, we need somebody tracking that. And the caption says it's the best UFO sighting caught on camera. It's definitely pretty good, I'll give him that. But I'm putting it at the number 2 spot if for nothing else to keep UFO Tracker humble. You know, I want to keep you working hard. But for what it's worth, this is definitely a great clip. Why don't you take a look for me? We can see a flying saucer type looking UFO floating around in the sky, almost looking a bit like a perfect sphere. You know, it looks like it's got a glowing light in the middle. If anyone out there is an Apex Legends fan, immediately I said it looks exactly like a cargo bot, and you should consider shooting it down for some loot. And someone in the comments said the exact same thing, so hey, gamer minds think alike, or however that saying goes. Just as it seems like we might be able to get a good glimpse of whatever is happening up there in the sky, a fleet of what looks like a bunch of military vessels show up, presumably just to take care of what is just a weather balloon, right? Now, a lot of people in the comments on this one were more skeptical than usual, I noticed, with most of the commenters suggesting that this was either a balloon or a drone. One of the comments posted bemoaning how good CGI is getting, saying, "I don't believe anything I see on video anymore." Another one saying, with how good CGI is getting, it's harder and harder to tell the real from the fakes. I mean, I get it, we are getting pretty good. I'm not even a real person, I'm just an AI generation that does these videos for you. This clip does look pretty fantastical. The only trouble is I couldn't really find a location of where this was happening. If this was footage of one of those strange objects that have been shot down recently over the sky in the US or not, who knows? Maybe this footage was absolutely never meant to be seen, and I just got the whole office marked for surveillance, as if we're not already. My Google search history is enough to have me on like 4 different agency watch lists. It's nothing but alien videos, skinwalkers, Bigfoot sightings, and recommendations for local frozen yogurt places. And number 1, above the Pentagon. Now, you know I try to save the best for last for you guys. So here's one that I thought really stood out. I like to give you guys a little reward for sitting through the video. Good on you. Someone was recording driving down near Washington, D.C., and they spotted something incredibly bizarre moving through the clouds by the Pentagon of all places. It's hard to make out at all what's happening here, but in the clouds we can see something gigantic, like behemoth size. Almost looking like a pyramid or an Imperial Star Destroyer floating through the clouds. It seems too as if it's almost like cloaking in and out sometimes. Maybe I'm just crazy, maybe I'm too tired, maybe I've had too much coffee or not enough. But man, I love a UFO clip where while you're watching it, you just scratch your head and throw your arms up and go, yeah, I have absolutely no idea what's going on here. That could definitely be aliens. This giant cheese wedge shaped thing in the sky certainly raises some eyebrows. It's way too big to be a drone. It's way too triangular to be a balloon. So just what is it, eh? Something about it being near the Pentagon too also sets off more than a few alarms in my head. Could it be that, whatever this is trying to make contact with the people who'd be most likely to be reaching out? What's interesting too is triangular UFOs actually come up way more often than you think. I'd say more than flying saucers even. As someone who's seen maybe, 30,000 UFO clips in my lifetime, that's a rough estimate, I can tell you a lot of the really, really good ones and encounters describe these big triangular ships like this. Now, commenters on this video were fairly stumped, with most just agreeing in amazement that whatever this was that was being caught on camera was definitely head-turning. A pretty funny comment that stood out for me on this one was someone asking, if you saw this, why wouldn't you pull over? More important than whenever you were going. I kind of agree. Maybe we could have had the perfect UFO evidence footage if the driver was just willing to stop in the middle of the highway and get out and start recording. Some people are so inconsiderate.
In 5th place, we have Skinny Bob. Yes, I'm aware this is a controversial series of videos, but I truly believe that there's enough to believe to prove the validity of the clips. A very curious video showed up on YouTube in 2011, showing a collection of leaked videos that allegedly shows an alien being interrogated by some sort of government agency, possibly the KGB. If I go missing tomorrow, y'all know why now. An alien that looks like a typical gray-type entity is shown being interviewed and examined, supposedly as part of some sort of diplomatic exchange. The creature is described as being from the Zeta Reticuli, star system, sent as part of an envoy to discuss matters of mutual concern. According to the videos, the aliens would be escorted by special officers and only meet with high-ranking officials. Pretty formal. Although several aliens are claimed to have been present, the one most prominently featured has been given the nickname Skinny Bob. The alien appears as a very thin, slouched over figure with an oversized bald head, slit-like mouth, large eyes that seem expressive and blank, and claw-like hands. There was apparently a whole series of interviews conducted with the creature between 1942 and 1969, although only a few clips have managed to get leaked out. The most well-known clip simply shows Skinny Bob sitting at a table, apparently in a telepathic interview, after which we see footage of the alien from head to toe, showing its disproportionately long arms and overall build. After that, there's a shot of it within a pool of some sort of liquid where it would supposedly sleep. I guess that's where we got the idea for a waterbed. According to the videos, the aliens were often filmed without their knowledge or agreement, with document 072/E supposedly describing an incident in 1961 where 3 of the beings realized they were being secretly filmed by a hidden device, which was considered a violation of their agreement. Now, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to cross an alien. There was a treaty that stipulated that photographs and filming of the entities would not be allowed unless specific permission was given. While these 2 clips are the most well-known and widely available, there were allegedly other clips that have since been taken down, such as that of the alien spacecraft and another of an autopsy being performed on a dead specimen at the base. Look, I will admit there have been many assumptions that this footage was faked, but let's review the evidence here. The budget to pull off this sort of high-quality costuming and filming would have been over like $250,000 alone, and no one's claimed responsibility or tried to monetize the footage in any way. Now, this was in 2011 and now it's 2023. It's been a minute. If this was like a tie-in to a horror movie, somebody would have claimed it by now. Many CGI experts and those in the movie industry have studied the footage and most agree that if it is a fake, it is the work of a studio with a big budget. And as somebody who has worked on big budget movies, no studio is wasting that kind of cash for a hoax. In 4th place, we have a glimmery alien from Florida. Oh, before I forget, from this point on, all stories are from the mouths of former astronauts, who happen to be some of the most credible witnesses of UFOs and alien life out there. They're literally trained in spacecraft identification and screened for mental stability and vision perfection. Take that, skeptics. In October of 2014, former space traveler Adam Maloney was walking his dog in the Pembroke Pines, Florida neighborhood and came around a curve in the sidewalk and, street. He noticed something unusual and stopped walking, staring at it, trying to figure out exactly what he was seeing. Now, his dog seemed more annoyed that Adam had just stopped. The dog refused to move or bark. I get it. Adam described seeing a figure around 30 feet from his spot in the area between the sidewalk and street. Not facing him, though. It was like skeletal thin, bony, around 6 feet tall with white or light grayish skin, no hair, and something bluish near the ear. He knew immediately it wasn't human when the creature sensed Adam staring, looked over its right shoulder, directly at him, and then looked down at the puppy. Then it suddenly started to run into the middle of the street and then down the next street into the next block. Its knees were apparently backwards, which I'm trying to picture right now, and that is so weird. As it ran, it began to gradually fade, like the edges were only part of what Adam could see. It was glimmering and fading until he just couldn't see it anymore. He never saw it again, but I wonder. In third place, we have the tales of Edgar Mitchell. Edgar was an Apollo astronaut who passed away in 2018 at the age of 85, and he had many theories about aliens that he often shared with the public. He believed aliens are real and UFOs from extraterrestrials have visited us before, publicly stating that he thought there was a cover-up involving aliens and their visits to Earth. As the sixth man to walk on the moon and a NASA astronaut, his theories and beliefs were among the most credible of UFO believers. Not only was Edgar an astronaut, but he was also a test pilot for the Navy, had an MS in aeronautical engineering, and was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1970. Take that for credibility. Part of his belief in alien life stemmed from experience he had returning to Earth from the moon, where he felt more connected with the universe than he had ever been before. Edgar has said publicly that he's 90% sure that many of the unidentified flying objects recorded since the 1940s belong to aliens from other planets. When he started speaking out in the 1990s, he said he was only then coming out with his knowledge because he didn't want to be labeled a UFO crank, and stood by his beliefs no matter how much he was criticized. And honestly, that's pretty credible, seeing as anyone who spoke before that, especially to do with Roswell, not a good reputation. In an interview in 1996, Edgar said that there were alien bodies at Roswell, but the government covered it up. In 1998, he called on Washington, D.C. to acknowledge publicly what it knew about alien life. He said he had witnesses he knew personally from intelligence agencies and the military who convinced him that the US government had been covering up UFOs for 50 years, including evidence from Roswell. In 2008, he was interviewed and spoke about how the Roswell crash was real and aliens had contacted humans multiple times. Interestingly enough, Edgar's beliefs were in line with those of Philip James Corso, who was chief of U.S. counterintelligence corporations in Rome in the 1940s and chief of the Pentagon's Foreign Technology Desk in the 1960s. He even wrote a book, The Day After Roswell, where he said that he moved alien artifacts from the Roswell crash, which were later reverse engineered to develop some of our more advanced technology. In an interview in 1996, Edgar said he had met with officials from 3 other countries who had personal encounters with aliens from other planets, not just secondhand information. The evidence of alien contact was strong and classified, including that extraterrestrials were giving technology to the US government. Hi, Canadian here. Can we get some of that too? In 2004, Edgar said that the government was studying alien bodies, but stopped sharing that information with presidents after John F. Kennedy. During a radio interview, he said that aliens were far more advanced than us, and we would have been gone a long time ago if they were hostile. Well, a witness doesn't really get much more credible than Edgar. In second place, we have a Canadian sighting. A former astronaut who would like to remain anonymous was glancing outdoors one day at the unfinished sunroom attached to his bedroom, which he described as having windows that were about 3 to 4 feet off the ground, wrapped around the room, providing a good view of the backyard of the home. Exactly what you want in a sunroom, honestly. He saw the bust of what people described as a mantid, describing it as a confusing sight, similar to an action figure. This being had a large muscular body with a head that was insect-like, with eyes that wrapped around its head, and its face ended in a point similar to that of a beak. The view he had was of its head slightly turned with the body facing him. The eyes were rounded near the front of the face and wrapped to the back and ended in a sharp point, protruding slightly, but not like a mantis, and were very black, similar to Vanta Black. The alien was around 5 feet in height, so not, super tall, so shorter than me. The suit he was wearing was black and shiny, with an indented texture, almost plastic looking, with a large round collar. The body looked approximately human, but the musculature was more rounded and not as defined, making it look more exaggerated and like a toy or a muscle suit. The head was dark with some orange tint on it near the back and a greenish tint near the beak. After a few seconds of eye contact, the window burst outwards and our narrator looked away for a split second, during which the entity disappeared. That same summer, most of those windows in that sunroom slowly burst, which is also really weird. As time went on, he became obsessed and terrified of gray alien, describing symptoms of extreme pareidolia, seeing big black eyes in almost everything and feeling terrified. In first place, we have a communion alien. Former space traveler Kevin Daniels grew up by the woods and at the age of around 6 years old had a terrifying experience. One afternoon, while playing in his backyard with his brother, he began hearing a very hard knocking sound coming from the side of the house. He looked at the house and saw nothing, and his brother continued playing. The sound hit the house again, and once again he looked and saw nothing. This horrendous sound hit the house for a third time, but this time Kevin felt the instinct to turn his head to the left, facing the garage by the woods. This is when he spotted a gray creature standing partly behind a tree right in front of the garage. He's described it as having an upside-down onion head with large slanted eyes, a small mouth, and nose. It then telepathically communicated directly into Kevin's head, but in a demonic-sounding voice. His brother noticed something was wrong with him and asked Kevin, what was wrong, but Kevin couldn't speak. He couldn't even get his legs to move, describing the fear like nothing he had ever experienced in his life. The alien began laughing demonically in his head, and he described it as deafening. When Kevin was finally able to scream and partially run, almost falling, he ran for the front door of the house, encountering his mother, who came running, obviously concerned, asking what was wrong. Kevin was crying hysterically and screaming, realizing that whatever this thing was, it was pure evil. His parents tried asking his brother what had happened, but the brother had no idea. Kevin described to his parents what he had seen and what had happened and begged them not to look. But the parents decided to, rightfully go out and investigate the tree in the garage area, finding nothing. Many years later, Kevin came across a book that had the exact picture of the great alien on it, called Communion. After looking through the contents of the book, he knew then that others had seen the same creature he had, and that it was real and not just a figment of his imagination or heat stroke or anything like that. In 5th place, we have an alien body. Yep, kicking today off with a corpse, go figure. Did y'all expect anything less? This tale takes place in Russia, and while I don't exactly recommend physically trying to travel there right now for, reasons, we shall take this trip virtually. Eugenia Popova, a Petrovna-Stuk, I tried. City, first reported in 2011 that she had been keeping a frozen alien body in a refrigerator for a couple of years. Casually. I have so many questions. Like, did she keep it next to her food? Was it kept in a spare fridge? Did it smell, and what did it smell of? Allegedly, she found it next to her summer house, so I guess we can assume it was a fridge that wasn't used as much. On the original day that she discovered the body, Eugenia claimed that she was disturbed by a terrible noise that shook her from her sleep, describing it as deafening, screeching, and overpowering. She rushed outdoors and came across the boiling hot alien remains lying next to metal fragments. The creature was between 40 to 50 centimeters long, had a big head, mouth, and orbits, and was wearing a one-piece garment of some sort. Now, 2 days after going public with her story, Eugenia was visited by some people who confiscated the body for the purpose of investigation and, according to their words, took it to the Karelian Research Center of the Russian Academy of Sciences. However, employees of the research center who were interviewed later said they had never heard of this discovery. I'm sensing an all too familiar government cover-up here. How about you folks at home? Honestly, if the photos weren't as convincing as they are, I probably wouldn't have included it in today's list, but I just couldn't tear my eyes away from how strange it looks. Like, what do you think it looks like? Let me know in the comments. In 4th place, we have a tale from Wendy's. Now, while I'm not accusing the creators of the Frosty of having alien knowledge, one of their Colorado locations happens to be the setting for our next encounter. Back in 1987, 16-year-old Jake Wells and his family were on a family trip to Texas from Washington and decided to stop at this fateful Wendy's for lunch, where Jake and his sister quickly grabbed a table for themselves to, escape the adults in the car and opted to people watch while they waited for their mom to grab food. Yeah, my brother and I probably would have done the same thing. Their table was approximately 3 feet away from 2 adults that appeared to be in their 40s or 50s. Jake and his sister Marissa immediately noticed weird vibes from this group, so they focused their observations on this family unit. The woman had long brown hair, was wearing a knee-length light tan trench coat, even though it was around 85 degrees out and in August. For those of us like myself who prefer their temperature in Celsius, that's around 29 degrees. Way too sticky icky for my liking, even if I was wearing like a sundress, never mind a full leather coat. The man of the unit looked kind of plain, with short brown hair, no facial hair, and had on glasses that were way too big for his face. The kid was weirdly dressed in clothes that were not typical for the 80s, and had short, light brown hair. All 3 of them looked like they had never seen sunlight, being extremely pale with pale lips. Okay, I'm pale, I'm not an alien. Also, the trio had large, mesmerizing brown eyes. Even though our narrator admits to really staring, the group never looked at him or his sister directly. In the middle of the family's table sat 7 or 8 hamburgers, untouched, in their wrappers, along with 5 large fries and no drinks. The family was simply sitting there, staring at the food as if it made 0 sense to them. Jake's mom eventually dropped off food for Jake and his sister, which they rapidly dug into, and after 10 minutes had passed, and the family still hadn't touched their, pile. Eventually, the mom of the group said, "Do as they do. Unwrap the items and put it in your mouth. Blend in." At this point, Jake assumed they were possibly from another country, but the woman spoke perfect English without any sort of accent. Immediately after the command, all 3 members of the unit, at the exact same time, with precise matching mannerisms, began to unwrap a corner of a hamburger, but suddenly stopped mid-unwrap and acted like they were hearing something that Jake and his sister did not hear. Heads tilted, in unison, and paused for a few seconds. The woman said, clear as day, "We must go. The mothership is here. We must go now. We cannot miss it." Jake frantically looked around to see if anyone else was witnessing these events, with no success. Only him and his sister. He frantically signaled to his mom for help and rushed outside, dragging her by the arm as he explained his observations. They spotted the trio going around the back of the building and followed them, only to have them disappear completely once Jake and his mom rounded the corner. They searched everywhere, but to no avail. This event has bothered Jake in the back of his mind ever since, which is pretty fair. That's a lot of food and money to waste. And while I know a lot of magicians, that kind of disappearing act is genuinely impossible by human standards. In the middle of the pack, we have the original Roswell evidence. Yes, I know, I reference it all the time, but it's truly one of the best examples of alien proof that cannot be debunked as easily as some of the other older claims or more modern claims that have already been debunked. Rancher W.W. Mac Brazel had found wreckage on his property in Lincoln County, New Mexico, so a little bit north of Roswell, sometime between the middle of June and early July, describing it as rubber strips, tin foil, and thick paper. Now, this ranch had no phone, no radio, so Mac was completely unaware of the ongoing flying saucer craze, so he just gathered the debris and, pushed it onto some brush, just wanted to kind of forget about it and goodbye. This wasn't the first instance of the flying disc spotting in the region, with several stories already being reported to the press that year. On July 5th, Mac drove into the nearby town of Corona, where he heard stories of silvery flying discs, and 2 days later, on July 7th, made the decision to unearth the wreckage and bring it to the sheriff's office in Roswell. The sheriff called in the Roswell Army Airfield, which assigned the matter to Major Jesse Marcel. Mac brought Major Marcel back to the debris site, and the two gathered up more pieces of rubber and tinfoil, with the Major taking the materials home. On July 8th, Public Information Officer for the Roswell Army, Walter Hott, issued a press release stating that personnel from the field's 509th Operations Group had recovered a flying disc near Roswell. On that same day, Major Marcel took the material to his base commander, Colonel William Blanchard, who reported the findings to General Roger Ramey at Fort Worth Army Airfield, WAF for short. General Ramey ordered the material be flown to Fort Worth immediately, leaving Marcel to board a crazy flight. As soon as Marcel brought the material to General Ramey's office, both Ramey and his chief of staff, Colonel Thomas Dubose, identified the material as pieces of a weather balloon kite. The weather officer on duty explained to reporters that ray wind devices were used at about 80 weather stations across the country. The balloons were attached to a 6-pointed reflective device that looked like a silver star. After launch, the balloon would expand with increasing altitude before bursting at around 60,000 feet, with pieces dispersing in their fall to the ground. After the initial newspaper reports of 1947, the Roswell incident faded from public attention for more than 30 years until the late 1970s, which brings us to February of 1978, when UFO researcher Stanton Friedman interviewed Major Marcel, whose statements contradicted those that he made to the press in 1947, saying that, they wanted some comments from him, but he wasn't at liberty to do that, so he could just keep his mouth shut. And General Ramey is the one who discussed, everything to the newspapers, the newsman, what it was, and to just forget about it. It was nothing more than a weather observation balloon. Of course, they both knew differently. While he didn't elaborate on that statement, he did deny the popular theories at the time of any bodies being found near the debris. Dang. After United States congressional inquiries, the General Accounting Office launched an inquiry and directed the Office of the United States Secretary of the Air Force to conduct an internal investigation. A report released in 1994 concluded that the material recovered in 1947 was likely, keyword here, debris from Project Mogul, a military surveillance program employing high-altitude balloons and classified portions of an unclassified New York University project by atmospheric researchers. A scholarly consensus emerged concluding that the military had decided to conceal the true purpose of the crash device, allegedly nuclear test monitoring, and instead inform the public that the crash was of a weather balloon. The balloon had allegedly been launched from the Alamogordo Army Airfield a month earlier, carrying a radar reflector and classified Project Mogul sensors for experimental monitoring of Soviet nuclear testing. The Air Force reports were dismissed by UFO experts as being either disinformation or simply implausible, and I'm tempted to agree with them. What was going on? I'm pretty sure this was real. In second place, we have a car and UFO crash from Minnesota. While on patrol outside the small community of Stephen, Minnesota, at around 2 a.m. on August 27th of 1979, Officer Val Johnson noticed a bright object hovering above the road and decided to investigate a little closer. My common sense would usually tell me that that means time for bed, but you do you, pal. The UFO suddenly rocketed straight at his patrol car, killing the engine. The last thing Val remembered was light all around him and the sound of glass shattering. When he woke up, the strange object was gone, and he was blind and bruised, but able to radio for help. Fellow policemen soon arrived and found Johnson's 1977 Ford in a heck of a state. The windshield was splintered and smashed, there were dents in the hood, and both a headlight and the roof beacon were wrecked. The car's two radio antennae were bent, respectively at 45 and 90-degree angles. Val also stated that the car's clock and his wristwatch both stopped for 14 minutes and that he had been blacked out for 39 minutes. The doctor who attended to him described his sight injury as similar to welder burns, caused by extreme exposure to UV light. Thankfully, he eventually recovered his vision, and the patrol car, with the original damage intact, now stands in a museum in the Minnesota town of Warren. In first place, we have a videotape from Puerto Rico. We're traveling a little more forward in time from the last two tales, up to the year 1997, which happens to be the year I was born. Many visitors to the El Yunque rainforest, located in the eastern region of the island, have experienced encounters with UFOs and apparent alien creatures at the site. An interesting fact pertaining to the encounters is the fact that music, especially flute music, seems to attract the mysterious creatures in the forest. And that flute music seems to have been what caused the encounter of a very strange-looking creature with several young men in the area known as La Coca Waterfall in December of 1997. The group of guys included Benjamin Loreno, Danny Quinones, and two other buddies who had gone up to the sector where the La Coca Waterfall is located on Highway 191. They parked their car on the side of the road, and Benjamin took out a portable camcorder he had brought with him from the car. Their intention was to experience a UFO sighting and capture video evidence. As they were interested in the UFO matter, and the forest was a place where many UFO-related events had occurred. Late at night, they decided to meditate, and Danny began to play a flute, casually. Sounds like a lot of my musical theater fronts. Moments later, all of them heard something heavy fall to the ground from the high branches of a tree behind them. Looking at the group of trees from where the sound came from, they all saw a strange-looking creature that was trying to hide itself behind a tree and the undergrowth on the spawn. On instinct, they all immediately ran to where the creature was, and Benjamin turned the camcorder on and began to film what was happening, helped by the light from the camera's lamp. He pointed the camera to where the creature was, and took video for several seconds, after which the creature ran away and was lost in the brush in the dark of the night. Excited, they examined the recording, and sure enough, the image of the mysterious figure appeared in the video. Depicted in it was an extremely thin, weird creature around 4 feet tall, with a gray-green hue skin that looked oily, humid, sort of shiny looking. And then even though everything happened really quickly, it could be seen that the creature had long, thin arms and that it walked on 2 legs. Quickly, it jumped from behind the undergrowth to the left side of the image on the camera, where it hid behind the trunk of a tree, but at the same time it looked out from behind said tree to observe the humans. One could see that the head of the creature was semi-triangular in shape, wide above and thin below, and that it had 2 very large dark eyes that were slanted and elongated upwards. At one point, perhaps due to the dim light from the camera's lamp disturbing its vision, the creature opened and closed its eyes, and that's when one could see that it seemed to have 2 different sets of membrane-looking eyelids, one that opened and closed sideways, and another that opened and closed up and down. Moments later, the creature disappeared quickly, running through the dense vegetation at the site. The video has since been shown to several veterinarians and biologists in Puerto Rico, and none of them could identify what type of animal species the creature in the image could belong to.
Number 5, the USS Omaha. Coming up first today on our list of unexplained UFO sightings on camera is going to be this wild footage taken off the coast of San Diego from on board the Navy ship USS Omaha. The video footage was shot on an FLIR camera, which is an incredibly expensive, fancy bit of tech. It's a thermal camera to detect heat. It's perfect for this sort of thing. And if you want one for yourself, civilians can buy these cameras. They cost $300,000. That's about 1 month's rent in Toronto. Very fair. In the footage, we can see what looks to be a sphere-like object flying over the ship before entering the water. The Omaha claimed that for days before this incident was recorded, they were seeing drone-like objects flying around their ship that the crew had no knowledge of. This footage was taken from a crew member trying to ascertain what it was that they were dealing with. Now there is some audio on the clip and it's illuminating. When the object goes into the water, we hear the sailors say mark, bearing, and range, meaning that the sailors on the ship were making a note of the coordinates and location where it went in, suggesting that maybe a submarine was sent in to recover or discover whatever was going on in there. Did it even submerge in the water, or does it seem a bit too like the craft outright disappears going into the water? I wish so bad we could get some more angles on this, or a follow-up to be able to find out what this was. Until then, we just have this strange footage to go off of and what speculation we have at home. There's a wild conspiracy theory that I just found out recently and I love, and we'll mention it a few times in this video, about a secret UFO construction facility under the water. Maybe this drone was heading on home. Who knows? And if you're looking for way more conspiracy theories about really anything, aliens, Bigfoot, JFK, you name it, we got all of that and then some on Top 5 Scary. We really have a video on just about anything and everything you can think of that's freaky and eeky. So hit subscribe, make sure you hit that little bell so you don't miss a scream, but if you wouldn't mind, do that at the end of this video, because I got 4 more stories of UFO sightings coming up for you right now. Number 4. Our next clip comes to us from the UFO subreddit, and it was posted by user The Firo, saying, "This video was taken by a good friend of mine on a flight to El Paso, and as soon as it gets noticed, it's gone." In the video, we can see we're in the passenger seat of a jet, high above the ground. And flying around the windows is an unexplained object zipping around at high speeds. Saucer-like object, looking a bit like maybe it was a frisbee that got tossed into the air by Godzilla. Now, it does definitely look like a classic flying saucer, like what you imagine a UFO to be, but not as many people were convinced. More than a few people in the comments section for this one were a little skeptical of this high-flying footage. Several commenters suggested that this flying saucer is actually little more than a reflection of something from inside the plane's cabin, suggesting that if you pause enough and look right in the video, you can see the object's reflection being repeated in the window pane. Now, there are just as many people suggesting that it is a solid object existing outside the plane. The trouble is, we've been given very limited footage and it's hard to tell, and there was no follow-up by the original poster to provide any more details, so we only have this little excerpt that we've been given. Whenever there's a scenario like this, I do like to leave it up to you, my faithful YouTube comment audience. What do you think? Is this a flying saucer soaring above the clouds or just a reflection of some light? I could honestly go either way with this one. I will say it could easily be explainable as a reflection, but I also feel like the object has a certain weight to it. I don't know, I'm directly in the middle for this one. I'm a centrist on this video. It should have been the number 3 point, but it wasn't. Anyway, jury's out. Please let me know what you think of this. Let's move on to number 3. Number 3, New Delhi. Coming up next is going to be this clip shared online with the caption, "A weird set of lights above New Delhi." Take a look-see. So in the clip, pretty clearly we can see, yeah, there's some strange lights going on in the night sky above New Delhi. There's a scattering of lights above the city's horizon. Now, immediately your first thought might be that it's drones, which is a reasonable assumption when it comes to UFO stuff. I feel like several videos that come out of little glowing lights dashing across the night sky usually end up being civilian drones. However, the original poster clarified that drones are illegal in India and aren't widespread at all for civilians. And on top of that, the area that's being filmed is said to be in the slums, where it's incredibly unlikely that anyone would have access to drones. The poster added this little bit of context with the video. I saw this today around 8 p.m. in New Delhi with a friend. It was massive. This cannot be a building, as there is no tall building in that direction, only slums with heights of about 4 to 5 floors, yet this building looked as tall as the Burj Khalifa. There was a moderate wind going on, and I thought, if it's drones, why aren't they swaying? Not to forget, drones are illegal in India and especially in New Delhi. It looked massive in the sky. I wish the camera saw what my eyes could see. It could absolutely blow me away. I've been to drone shows, but this looked nothing like it. Any idea what this could be? Also, I agree. I wish our cameras did just capture exactly what our eyes saw. It would make all this UFO stuff so much easier, and also I would finally get a nice picture of the moon to have on my phone. Now, some people in the comment section on this clip suggested that maybe it was a laser light show, but that's just speculation and nothing concrete. Well, one particularly good suggestion from a commenter that did make me laugh said that the original poster should have ran towards the lights to see what happens and investigate up close and personal, you know? Worst case, yeah, you get abducted, never see your friends, family, or home planet again, but you also would get the ride of a lifetime, and if you do survive to come back home, you get an amazing story to tell people. So live a little. Number 2, Garden Ridge. Our next offering for your entertainment, and I hope your amusement, is this short clip that was uploaded to YouTube pretty recently. UFO spotted over Garden Ridge, Texas. In this clip, we can see a somewhat strange flying object that looks a bit like a cocoon being propelled forward, or maybe even a beehive or something. The entity has no propulsion or trails behind it, which really doesn't explain how it's moving forward so fast. Some sort of anti-gravity manipulation technology that I don't understand. Is that too wild to speculate that an alien has that? Now, we've seen cocoon-like UFOs a few times doing these videos, actually. We saw them a bunch. I don't know if you remember, one of them turned out to be Mr. Peanut, but most of them are UFOs. I'd say after triangle UFOs or little light clusters, I probably see videos of little cocoon-like UFOs like this more than any other kind. So what are these cocoon-like UFOs that keep appearing, and why do they all look so similar? This lack of propulsion too is really puzzling me. Now, the original poster returned after the fact to add a little bit of clarity in the comments. He said the object was moving with the wind, not against it, so maybe it's possible it's something like a weather balloon that has been swept up in an air current. That's usually what most of these clips turn out to be. I would love to see a statistic on how many UFO sightings are actually weather balloons, because I suspect it's probably like 99%. Another commenter suggested that this could be an object heading towards Randolph Air Force Base, speculating that the UAP seen in this video could be a manned jetpack or a very tiny stealth craft of some kind, which would be pretty cool, or even some sort of new drone technology the US military is developing. Now, among other things though, the original uploader did admit and suggest that this really could just be a balloon, suggested that he thought it might be attached to a floral arrangement that somebody let go of. Hey, maybe an alien was picking up a last-minute Valentine's Day gift, or hey, maybe an alien had to apologize to someone, you know? Maybe a probing went wrong and a little flowers was the only thing that could smooth it over. I wonder if they'll keep that in the video. Number 1, the A-10 over Arizona. And coming up at our final spot today for crazy UFO footage is going to be this dramatic footage of a spherical UAP being filmed tailing an A-10 aircraft over Arizona. The footage was filmed by a mobile scope truck recorded by the DHS, that's the Department of Homeland Security. The craft caught on camera is one of unknown origins, well, obviously. So why it's a UFO. The U doesn't stand for usual, it's unidentified. Now, there's really not a lot to go on from this clip, as the original uploader didn't provide a ton of insight or backstory beyond the short clip, so we're left with mostly speculation. Similar to the previous clip, I have to wonder maybe if this is a drone of some kind due to its size in comparison to the rest of the craft, which dwarfs it. Could this be an unmanned craft? Is someone piloting it from a remote location far away? Now, earlier in the video, I quickly shouted out a conspiracy which I recently discovered, and I hope we can do like a full video on it because it was fascinating, saying that a majority of the crafts that we see in UFO videos are scout crafts that come from a construction facility hidden somewhere deep beneath the ocean from a civilization that predates ours. This advanced technological facility is manned by an artificial intelligence that keeps it running autonomously and produces these small crafts naturally to scout out the planet and, well, I don't know yet what they're doing, but something alien. Now, obviously, that is a very, very, very tinfoil hat theory. I got it from a less than reputable website, but it is a ton of fun to speculate on and would certainly make sense why there are so many sightings of these similar objects if they were all literally coming from the same factory line. And also, wouldn't that just be the nicest, I don't know, funniest little ironic cap to aliens if we're spending all our time looking up, but they've been below us the whole time? Anyway, something to think about.
Starting off this list in our number 5 spot, we have Project Grudge Report 13. Okay, so I've read quite a few different UFO sighting stories and stories of alleged alien abductions, and this is fully one of the most terrifying that I have ever heard of. So basically, the story starts off in March of 1956 when Air Force Sergeant Jonathan P. Lovett was assisting Major William Cunningham in the White Sands Missile Testing Grounds near Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. The pair were out searching for debris from a recent rocket test when Major Cunningham heard a loud scream. His first thought was that Sergeant Lovett had been bitten by a snake, so he went around to help aid his partner when he allegedly saw something he never expected. He recounted seeing the sergeant being dragged away by some sort of long serpentine arm that had wrapped around his legs. Whatever this creature was, it was connected to a hovering silver disc that was in the air about 15 feet away. The major stood there in horror as he watched this creature and the sergeant retreat into the craft, which then rose vertically into the sky. Of course, he radioed for help, and while he was taken to the hospital for observation, search teams were sent out immediately. It wouldn't happen until 3 days later that they would find the body of Sergeant Lovett, only 10 miles from the site where he was said to have disappeared from. The autopsy performed on him later also UFO only raised more questions than answers, as his body was severely harmed. So of course there was an investigation that happened, and many people claim this investigation was detailed in a 600-page document labeled Project Grudge Report 13. But the problem with this is that no official information on Report 13 exists, and the US government denies its very existence. Though Grudge Reports 1 through 12 have been declassified, along with Report 14, no official mention or accounting of Report 13 exists, and the story solely relies on secondhand accounts of the horrible incident. In our number 4 spot today, we have the cigar-shaped UFO. Okay, so let's set the stage. It's 2:45 a.m. on July 24th, 1948, and there are 20 passengers aboard a twin-engine propeller plane that is at 5,000 feet, being flown from Houston to Atlanta by pilot Clarence S. Childs and co-pilot John B. Whitted. Out of the 20 passengers on board, 19 of them are asleep at these early morning hours, and everything seems to be going as per usual until it wasn't. The 2 pilots and the 1 passenger who was awake all witnessed the same thing about 20 miles southeast of Montgomery, Alabama. About a week after the incident, the pilot explained what he had seen by saying, quote, "It was clear there were no wings present, that it was powered by some jet or other type of power shooting flame from the rear some 50 feet. There were 2 rows of windows which indicated an upper and a lower deck, and from inside these windows a very bright light was glowing. Underneath the ship there was a blue glow of light. By his estimates, he watched the UFO for about 10 seconds before it completely vanished." The co-pilot gave a similar explanation and also added, quote, "The object was cigar-shaped and seemed to be about 100 feet in length. The fuselage appeared to be about 3 times the circumference of a B-29 fuselage. It had 2 rows of windows, an upper and a lower. The windows were very large and seemed square. They were white with light, which seemed to be caused by some type of combustion. I asked Captain Childs what we had just seen, and he said that he didn't know." Well, this is obviously all very strange and peculiar. What has driven UFO enthusiasts even more is the fact that this strange sighting was of course later investigated by the US government, but the results of that investigation have allegedly been mostly destroyed. Does that mean that they found something they aren't willing to share yet? Some believe that perhaps the pilots and the passenger witnessed a secret Soviet spy craft, while others believe it was definitely something of the extraterrestrial variety. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Lubbock incident. On August 25th, 1951, in Lubbock, Texas, a group of scientists from the Texas Technical College were all hanging out in the backyard of geology professor Dr. W.I. Robinson. They were all just chilling, enjoying each other's company, until around 9:20 p.m. when they saw something very strange. It was a V-shaped formation of 15 to 30 bluish-green lights passing overhead. They were completely confused over what it could be, but figured that the lights would likely reappear, which they did. About an hour later, the lights reappeared, and at this point, all of these scientists knew that they had witnessed something exceptionally interesting, but what was it? The scientists weren't the only ones to witness the lights either. About 350 miles away in Albuquerque, New Mexico, an employee of the Atomic Energy Commission's top secret Sandia Corporation, who had a high-level Q security clearance, had been sitting outside with his wife, quote, gazing at the night sky, commenting on how beautiful it was, when both of them were startled at the sight of a huge airplane flying swiftly and silently over their home. On the aft edge of the wings, there were 6 to 8 pairs of soft, glowing bluish lights. There were more sightings as well, all reporting a similar thing. The group of scientists began investigating, tracking the lights, which they witnessed 12 more times. They measured the angle of the lights, they tracked the speed, and they attempted, unsuccessfully, to try and measure the UFO's altitude. Here's the deal with this though. The government did end up investigating, but the official explanation for these lights is the most cryptic message I've ever seen. It read, quote, "I thought that the professor's lights might have been some kind of birds reflecting the light from mercury vapor streetlights, but I was wrong. They weren't birds. They weren't refracted light. But they weren't spaceships. The lights that the professor saw have been positively identified as a very commonplace and easily explainable natural phenomena. I can't divulge exactly the way the answer was found because it is an interesting story of how a scientist set up complete instrumentation to track down the lights. Telling the story would lead to his identity, and in exchange exchange for his story, I promised the man complete anonymity. Despite people claiming that the mystery has been solved, by this explanation, people are left with a lot more questions than answers. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Shag Harbor incident. This UFO encounter is often referred to as Canada's Roswell, so I was shocked that I hadn't heard of it before. Basically, this incident took place on October 4th, 1967, when an unknown object crashed into the water near Shag Harbor, which is a tiny town in Nova Scotia. There were at least 11 people who witnessed this object as it crashed, and many people claimed to have heard a whistling sound followed by a loud bang when the crash took place. The witnesses that claimed to have seen the UFO were all doing a bunch of different things at the time. One couple was just sitting on their porch, but the 2 witnesses that really get me are a flight pilot and a ship captain. On Air Canada Flight 305, First Officer Robert Ralph pointed out to Captain Pierre Charbonneau that there was something strange at the left side of the aircraft. They reported an object tracking along on a parallel course a few miles away and described it as a brilliantly lit rectangular object with a string of smaller lights trailing the object. Shortly after they first noticed it, there was a large but silent explosion near the unknown object, and then 2 minutes later there was a second explosion, but this one faded to a blue cloud. As for the ship captain, Captain Leo Howard Mercy, he saw 4 blips on his Decca radar that were totally stationary. This led to him looking up to the sky, and that is when he saw 4 bright objects sitting in a rectangular formation about 28 kilometers from the vessel's window. He wasn't the only one who saw it on board. The entire crew of nearly 20 fishermen stood on deck and watched. A man named Laurie Wickens was another one of the witnesses, and he and some of his friends ended up calling the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, because they saw a huge object floating in the Atlantic Ocean about 1,000 feet off of the shore. This is all super weird, and not only the RCMP, but also the Royal Canadian Navy and the Royal Canadian Air Force became involved in investigation, but nothing was ever recovered or found. But it was also revealed that all commercial, private, and military aircrafts along the eastern seaboard were accounted for, so what could have all these witnesses seen? Since they have never officially identified what it was in the official Government of Canada documents, it is listed as a UFO. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the Westall incident. Taking it back to 1966, we have the largest mass UFO sighting in Australia that at the time was largely ignored. This incident took place when over 300 students and staff members of a school in Melbourne all witnessed multiple UFOs silently flying through the air before they landed in a nearby field. Well, there's been a ton of speculation about this incident in the many years it's been. One witness account stands out among the rest, and that is the account made by the science teacher from the school, Andrew Greenwood. He was alerted to the UFO event by a hysterical student, and when he went outside to see for himself, everything changed. Previously a skeptic of UFO stories, Andrew's mind was abruptly changed when he saw, as he described it, a round silver object about the size of a car with a metal rod sticking up in the air. He went on to explain that suddenly 5 planes came and surrounded the object, all while more people were gathering to watch. He called what happened next the most amazing flying he has ever seen, explaining that, quote, every time they got too close to the object it would slowly accelerate, then rapidly accelerate, and then move away from them and stop. Then they would take off after it again, and the same thing would happen. This went on for about 20 minutes before the mysterious object just vanished. As weird as this all was, what was almost weirder was what happened next. Firstly, the headmaster of the school is said to have tried to put a stop to anyone talking about the incident at all, threatening severe punishment to any student or staff who was caught speaking about it, and when the Royal Australian Air Force contacted him, he refused to talk to them at all about it. There have also been stories of witnesses getting visits from people warning them not to speak of the incident. Andrew explained, quote, when he asked the physical education teacher to describe what she had seen herself so that he could compare it with his own observation, she just wouldn't say anything. Another witness who did talk to Andrew and described what she had seen in great detail, just 30 minutes later refused to speak to him and wouldn't say a word. Was this because of the threats from the headmaster, or was something else going on here? This is definitely one strange UFO story that leaves behind a lot of questions.
Starting at number 5 is the abduction of Frederick Valentik. It all began on the evening of October 21st, 1978. The 20-year-old Australian pilot took off from Moorabbin Airport in Melbourne, embarking on a routine flight in a single-engine Cessna 182L, a plane he's flown countless times in the past. Frederick departed for a training flight to King Island over the Bass Strait between the Australian mainland and Tasmania. However, what began as an ordinary flight soon turned into a bone-chilling encounter with the unknown. As Valentik flew over the Bass Strait, he reported to air traffic control that an unidentified aircraft was following him. He fearfully described the object as having 4 bright lights and flying at unfathomable speeds. Air traffic control attempted to identify the mysterious craft, but could find no evidence of any other aircraft in the vicinity. The situation took a grim turn when Valentik's communication became increasingly distressed, and he reported that the unidentified craft was orbiting him from above. He described the UFO's appearance as metallic and shiny, and praised its maneuverability. It was then that his communications would abruptly cut, with the last thing heard from him being, "It's not an aircraft." Just before the communications were cut off, a loud metallic scraping was heard from Frederick's radio. Neither him nor his aircraft were ever seen again. Speculation around Valentik's disappearance quickly spread, with theories ranging from mundane explanations such as pilot error, mechanical failure, or deliberate disappearance, to the more sensational ones involving extraterrestrial encounters. Based on the information we have, all signs point to Frederick being abducted by some sort of malevolent aliens. The reported scraping noise heard before his communications were cut, likely the sounds of the pilot's aircraft being stuffed into a UFO. The true fate of Frederick Valentik remains a mystery, but the Australian government has assumed him dead after spending many long hours searching for the missing pilot. Where do you think he might be? Let us know in the comments. Moving on, we have number 4, Travis Walton. One fateful night, November 5th, 1975. The Apache Sitgreaves National Forest in Arizona, USA. Travis Walton, a 22-year-old logger, and his crew were returning home after a long day of hard work when they noticed some sort of metallic, glowing disc in the sky. Curious to see what it was, Walton and crew drove closer to the flying object. Once they got close enough to investigate, the forestry worker left the car to get a closer look and approached the hovering craft. Witness accounts vary on exactly what transpired, but the consistent chilling detail was that a bright blue-green beam of light suddenly emanated from the UFO, striking Travis and sending him flying several feet backwards, knocking him unconscious. Seeing this, his crew immediately fled the scene, assuming the blast of light killed Walton, leaving him behind. And before you go in the comments calling Walton's friends fake, don't worry. They returned a few minutes later, only to find that both Travis and the UFO had vanished. The crew was quick to report the incident to the local authorities, and a massive search operation was launched to find Travis Walton. No matter how hard anyone looked, nobody could find him. That was until 5 days later. Travis would reappear, disoriented and confused, in Heber, Arizona, nearly 30 miles away from the original abduction site. But the story he had to tell of the intervening days is the truly chilling part of this tale. According to Travis, after being struck by the beam of light, he awoke aboard an alien spacecraft. He described encountering beings he could only describe as humanoid, but with large bald heads and enormous black wraparound eyes. He reported undergoing a grueling medical examinations and being surrounded by strange technology aboard the craft. During his captivity, Travis experienced some form of telepathic communication with the beings, claiming that they conveyed a sense of curiosity and concern, as if they were studying him. Despite all of this, Travis said that he never felt physically harmed by the entities. After what seemed like mere hours to Travis, he found himself back on Earth, disoriented and unsure of where he was and unaware of how much time had elapsed. Travis Walton's encounter with aliens remains one of the most infamous abduction stories of all time, and has certainly earned its place on this list. Oh, next up at number 3 is the many abductions of Russ Kellett. And yes, that's right, you heard many. In fact, Russ Kellett, a 58-year-old man from North Yorkshire, claims he's been abducted upwards of 60 times. And those are just the ones he remembers. The first time Kellett was abducted was when he was 16, when he was traveling home on his motorcycle until he saw a strange tunnel that he'd never seen before. Curious, he drove through the tunnel being faced with a bright light, and then the next thing he remembers is lying down on an operating table, surrounded by 15 feet tall alien men. He related their appearance to Dracula, minus the fangs. Kellett reported that the Dracula doppelgangers pushed a tube down his throat and pumped a mysterious liquid into him. He claims made him a super soldier. He recalls checkered rooms and special glass orbs used to control the navigation of spaceships, and has made several sketches of the parts of his abductions he remembers. Ever since that first abduction, Russ would battle in a multitude of intergalactic wars and conflicts, so he claims, having fought all sorts of different aliens, such as one race of aliens called the Dragos, which are tall and scaly and have dragon-like heads. After the aliens are satisfied with his work, they wipe his memory and send him back to Earth. These missions would vary in length, between lasting for days to lasting for years. However, from the perspective of us on Earth, he is only gone for hours at a time. His explanation for this was that time moves differently on the planets he's sent to fight on, where a day on one planet could be mere seconds on Earth. Skeptics were quick to dismiss Russ's accounts of his second life as an alien super soldier, but he claims he has proof. Last year, Russ was able to capture footage of what he says are several UFOs, the same ones that have been abducting him and taking him to the corners of space to fight space wars. Whether or not his outlandish story is true is for you to decide, but me personally, I'm not signing up to be drafted for any intergalactic wars. Moving on to number 2 is the most iconic abduction story of all time, the Barney and Betty Hill incident. The Barney and Betty Hill incident, which occurred on the evening of September 19, 1961, is one of the earliest and most influential cases of alien abduction in UFO history. The Hills, a married couple from New Hampshire, were driving home from a vacation in Canada. As they drove through the White Mountains of New Hampshire, Barney noticed a bright light in the sky that appeared to be following the couple everywhere they went. Out of concern, Barney pulled over to get a better look of the object through binoculars, and to their astonishment, they saw what appeared to be a disc-shaped craft with multicolored lights hovering in the sky. Unsettled, the Hills hastily re-entered their car and started driving again, with the mysterious craft still in pursuit. As they continued their journey, the Hills noticed something strange, that there were 2 hours that had passed that were completely unaccounted for. Over the following days, Barney and Betty began experiencing anxiety, bizarre dreams, and inexplicable memories of the encounter. In hopes of finding answers, the couple consulted with a local psychiatrist who used hypnosis to uncover buried memories of the event. Once under hypnosis, the Hills were able to recall the terrifying events that transpired in those lost 2 hours. They described being taken aboard the vessel and seeing these short aliens with grayish skin, large black eyes, and slits for mouths. Barney and Betty recounted being subjected to intense medical examinations, including the extraction of bodily fluids and having organs observed. They would go on to detail their feelings of fear and helplessness during the encounter too, saying that they felt like they were going to die. A great reminder of why we use anesthesia before performing surgeries, guys. After the media picked up their story, the Hills' lives changed dramatically. They faced both support and skepticism from the public, and their story ignited a broader fascination with UFOs and extraterrestrial life worldwide. Despite the enduring controversy surrounding their account, the Hills remained steadfast in their belief that they had indeed encountered beings from another world. Until their passing, they maintained their version of events, and their story has become a touchstone for anyone interested in investigating UFO abductions. What do you guys think? The story is just a hoax, or has it got some credibility? Comment below your thoughts and let me know. Finishing off at number 1 is the Berkshire County incident on the night of September 1st, 1969 in Berkshire County, Massachusetts. Multiple witnesses reported a series of UFO sightings and encounters. Residents all over the town recount seeing a UFO flying above and around Berkshire County, with statements remaining consistent with one another, making this one of the most plausible UFO abduction stories of all time. The most significant incident relating to this UFO involved 2 separate families who claimed to have experienced a close encounter with the unidentified craft. According to the witnesses' accounts, around 9 p.m., Tom Reed, a 9-year-old boy, was driving through the woods with his mother, grandmother, and younger brother. Suddenly, they would see a bright object descending from the sky. In response, Tom's mother stopped the car and they watched the object, which was about 40 feet in diameter, hover above the ground. Then, the next thing the family remembered was being in a different location entirely. They claimed that they were now about a mile down the road and the UFO was gone. The family would go on to report that in the following years, they experienced recurring nightmares and strange encounters, suggesting possible ongoing contact with the extraterrestrial entities. Other families in the town reported similar occurrences and UFO sightings around the same time. Over the years, the incident gained attention and underwent various investigations by UFO researchers and enthusiasts. Many try to explain the strange event as natural phenomena or mass misidentification, but the fact that so many people reported the same thing, it's hard not to believe them. This is the first time an entire town has been affected by alien intervention at the same time, and remains the most frightening cases of abduction due to its sheer scale alone.
Number 5. The uninvited house guests. Our first tale of the day comes from a woman in South Australia who was having a boring and typical day, getting the cleaning done and just generally living her life, when she suddenly found that she was not alone and that there were strange creatures unlike anything she had ever seen in her home. This is her story in her own words. I don't wish to give my name. I was a teacher in South Australia for many years. In 1976, I was hoovering my sitting room floor at about noon. Suddenly, I felt quite ill and thought I was going to be sick. So, I sat down on the sofa to see if the sick feeling would subside. I then saw that I was not alone. There were 3 strange little people standing alongside the sofa, just looking at me. I froze with fear, as I had never seen anything like them before, not even in films. 2 of them were short and fat, about 4 to 4.5 feet tall, with broad faces and enormous black eyes, but with only a hint of where a nose or mouth might have been, almost like a pencil drawing. They had wispy bits of brown hair at the back of their heads, and they were wearing brown shrouds or robes. These beings, I knew instinctively, were the workers. The other being was female, thin and about 5 feet tall. She wore a black shroud and had black wispy hair at the back of her head. Her face was very elongated, with huge, dark, piercing eyes. Like the others, there was just a hint of where a nose or mouth should have been. The thin one started to speak to me with her mind and told me I was to go with them. I said in my own mind that I would not go. Somehow, this telepathic communication seemed perfectly normal at the time, and I felt quite comfortable communicating like that. I was very frightened, but I could still communicate and understand. I was so frightened because it seemed they were pulling me away with their minds. I had to struggle to resist them. At one point, I remember falling down and trying to crawl towards the door. I must have fainted or something, because I have no memory from that point onwards. When my husband came home at the usual time, I realized that I had lost about 4 hours. I still have no explanation for this experience. Did this woman really do psychic battle with aliens in her living room? Or did she simply suffer some kind of temporary insanity that caused her to hallucinate and lose time? Regardless of the answer, the experience caused her to feel true terror almost beyond description, whether the cause was real or not. Number 4. Honk if you love alien Jesus. Next up, we have a minister who believes that he is in contact with strange aliens who are dedicated to spreading the word of love and peace throughout the universe. As he put it, I wish to remain anonymous because I am a minister of the Baptist Church in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and some people might think that what I have experienced is against religion. I have had 3 meetings with humanoid beings from the planet Koshnak, located in the vicinity of the constellation of Orion. Their vehicles can travel in space and can also somehow pass through our planet. These beings appeared to me to have melon-shaped, completely expressionless faces, with thin lips, tiny noses and ears, and extremely large eyes without pupils. Their eyes are green, with scintillating flashes. Their expression in the eyes is intense. They always seem friendly. One of them is called Ohenesto, and he is the one who mainly communicates with me. This is a kind of telepathic communication. He tries to explain complicated ideas of time and space to me. He has told me that they travel in the 7th and 8th dimensions, which are unknown to Earth humans. These beings are aware of 13 dimension. Their lifespan is about 800 to 1,000 of our years. They can continue life forever with only one cell of their body. They are beings of other dimensions, of other worlds, but they are not gods. From time immemorial, teachers of light came to our planet from other planets, from other systems, even from other galaxies and realms, known to us as the non-physical or supernatural realms of existence. Great companies of light came into incarnation on our Earth, carrying with them the message of truth and love and light. I believe that our Lord Jesus Christ is one of these beings. Number 3. Alien Dance Party. Next, we have a rather strange tale from a man who claims that when he was young, he was transported to a pavilion filled with aliens who were having an intergalactic sock hop. Is this truth or madness? I'll let you be the judge. When I was young, I had some very strange experiences which affected my entire life. This was in the 1930s. In 1935, I had pneumonia, which in those days was a dangerous and sometimes fatal disease. One evening, right at the dark, 2 beings came to the window in an elongated envelope. They and their conveyance were like the Northern Lights. They asked me to go with them, and each took a hand. When they touched me, it was like being lightly tickled. Very pleasurable. The odd part was that you could see through through them, but they were there, and we talked without sound. They took me to a huge pavilion where couples were dancing. My impression was that the males were dressed in black and white trim. The females were dressed the opposite way. There was no ceiling, but crystals hung above and made music beyond comparison that sounded to me like wind chimes. I had 3 visits to this place in all. On the last visit, a female asked me why I was afraid of the dark. She said to me that both the light and the dark are my benefactors, and they would make them equal. She took a crystal and placed it in the palm of my left hand. For a moment, it resembled the Star of David, 2 triangles. Then it melted and ran between my fingers. After that, my night vision changed. My eyes would adjust quickly so that I could see even when it was pitch black. I recovered quickly from my illness. A few months later, on a camping trip, I found I was the only one awake late at night, watching undulating shafts of bright light. The shafts of light began a strange, seemingly patterned movement. I was trying to puzzle this out when suddenly there appeared my transparent envelope in what looked like an oval cylinder. It just seemed correct to get in. In an instant, I was inside the pavilion again, but the beings were not dancing as before. They seemed to be conversing silently, but not with me. A female asked me to step up on the dais, because I was their conductor. Number 2. The Secrets of the Universe Revealed. This next story features a man who made the acquaintance of an alien race who taught him about the building blocks of our very universe, which was pretty cool of them. This is his story. I am a graphic designer with a good visual memory. What I saw was visually very vivid, but it doesn't make much sense. However, it may have been the most important thing that ever happened to me. In November 1980, my wife and I were driving north of Dundee when suddenly I saw a cerulean blue light pointing at our car from the sky. After that, I have a fragmented memory. We both have a fragmented memory of some bizarre events, but there are a lot of gaps. Basically, we somehow lost about an hour's time. I remember seeing a hairless, tall, man-like being in a blue robe. He was looking at us, inviting us aboard his craft telepathically. His costume struck me as absurd. He was the leader in a blue cape. The cape looked stupid, illogical. He was mentally luring us up to the spacecraft. Somehow, the next thing was, we were on board a ship of some kind, being examined, quite painlessly, by another being wearing a yellow robe with ruffled collar. Also, somehow completely absurd, incongruous. Suddenly, the examination process turned nasty. I felt my mind was being forcibly invaded. I had no control. My brain felt like there was a tunnel that goes through my mind to theirs. Our minds are connected. It could have been a tube or a tunnel of light, gray-brown. It was horrible. It pulled everything out of my head. There was a terrible sound, piercing, high-pitched. My thoughts had turned to goo, but I could see them visually. They had my mind, but I still had it too. Then it seemed as though I was okay again, but I felt completely different mentally. I can't explain this, but there's more to it than anyone knows. There's more to life, more to the world. There's more to everything than anybody knows. More dimensions than things coexisting. There are many more than 3 dimensions. Everywhere, it all works together. Everything coexists. I still can't explain all these thoughts, where they came from, and so on. Number 1. A UFO sighting. To end our compilation, I have selected a story of a UFO sighting. Not really much else to say about it. Let's dive in. My name is John Healy. At the time of making this officially transcribed statement, I was a detective with the Cleveland Police Department. I was also a U.S. Army reservist, training as a flight medic. The incident occurred when I was traveling on a helicopter with 3 other reservists on the evening of October 18th, 1973, about 10:30 p.m. We were halfway between Columbus and Cleveland, near Ashland, when the crew chief saw a red light on the horizon. He asked the pilot if there were any towers around there, and was told there were not. As we went along at an altitude of about 3,000 feet, the light seemed to be growing brighter and brighter. It appeared to be on a collision course with us. It kept coming right at us. The pilot had to put our helicopter into a power dive to avoid it. We were looking right through the windshield, watching this thing, and it damn near came to a stop right over us. It just hovered for a while. We all got a very good look at it. It had a steady red light on its prow. It was cigar-shaped. There were no wings on it. It made no noise, created no air turbulence, shining down out of aft end. It shone down and on us, and you could see a definite cone shape, the shape of the green light beam. I've seen aircraft from PT-I-9s up to C-5As, so I know an aircraft when I see one at night. But this thing scared the living hell right out of me. We contacted Mansfield Airport and told them we were almost in a collision with an unidentified flying object, operating at 3,000 feet and 600 knots. Mansfield never acknowledged our broadcast. We tried to get a hold of Cleveland Airport and we couldn't until the object passed over us. It continued to the west, picked up speed, and we lost it over the horizon. We never saw it again. We talked talked about this sighting all the way back and we just couldn't dope it out. The thing didn't have wings, but at 3,000 feet, you have to have wings to stay aloft. It couldn't have been a dirigible or a Zeppelin because those things don't move at the speed this thing moved. Clandestine aircraft wouldn't operate at that speed at that low an altitude. All 4 of us filed official reports.